The first sword entered Kael Veyron's stomach before he even realized his own squad had stopped fighting the monsters. Cold steel punched through his leather armor, tore through flesh, and burst from his back in a spray of blood. For one impossible second, Kael simply stared at the blade sticking out of his body. Then he heard laughter. Not from the monsters, from behind him. "You actually believed we brought you here because we needed you?" Darius Crow twisted the sword. Agony detonated through Kael's abdomen. His knees struck the stone floor of the dungeon. Around him, the members of the Iron Fang party lowered their weapons. None of them looked surprised. Mira folded her arms against her chest. Bolton spat near Kael's boots. Even Ren, the young healer Kael had protected 3 separate times during the expedition, quietly stepped away. Kael understood everything. The dungeon, the impossible route, the sudden appearance of a crimson ogre, the way Darius had insisted Kael carry the monster-luring incense. This had never been an expedition. It was an execution. Darius ripped the sword free. Kael collapsed onto one hand, blood pouring between his fingers. "You should be grateful," Darius said. "At least your worthless ability finally has a purpose." Worthless. That word had followed Kael for 3 years. In this world, every human awakened an innate ability when they reached 18. Some received elemental magic. Others gained supernatural strength, healing, summoning, sword mastery, or strange powers capable of turning ordinary people into legends. Kael had awakened something called pain conversion. The examiner had stared at the crystal for almost a minute before bursting into laughter. According to every test performed afterward, pain conversion did absolutely nothing. Kael could still be injured. He still bled. He still felt pain. His wounds did not heal faster. His strength did not increase. There was no visible mana response. The ability was eventually classified as one of the lowest-ranked awakenings ever recorded. For 3 years, Kael survived as a porter. He carried equipment for real hunters. He dismantled monsters. He cleaned blood from weapons. He slept beside dungeon entrances while warriors celebrated inside taverns. And every time he asked for an opportunity to fight, people gave him the same answer. Know your place. Kael had known his place. That was why he had accepted Darius's offer. The Iron Fang party needed someone disposable enough to carry supplies and weak enough to abandon if something went wrong. Apparently, abandoning him had been the plan from the beginning. A thunderous roar shook the chamber. The crimson ogre emerged from behind a broken pillar. It stood nearly 4 meters tall, with red skin stretched over mountains of muscle. One curved horn had been shattered during the earlier battle, and several shallow cuts crossed its chest. Darius glanced at the monster and smiled. Perfect timing. Kael tried to stand. His legs failed. Why? Darius looked almost offended by the question. Because the guild pays compensation when a registered party member dies during an expedition. Your contract lists me as expedition leader. Your death gives us 12 gold crowns. 12. Kael laughed. Blood spilled from his mouth. His entire life was apparently worth 12 pieces of gold. Mira shrugged. Nothing personal. Nothing personal. Kael remembered carrying her when she had broken her ankle. He remembered giving Bolton half his food when the idiot had lost his rations. He remembered standing awake through an entire night because Rin had been terrified of sleeping inside a dungeon. Nothing personal. The Crimson Ogre charged. Darius and the others sprinted toward the exit. Kael tried crawling after them. Bolton kicked his hand away from the passage. Stay. The stone door slammed shut. Darkness swallowed the chamber. Then came the footsteps. Boom. Boom. Kael turned. The Crimson Ogre was approaching. He reached for the cheap dagger strapped to his thigh. His fingers barely closed around the handle. The monster swung. Kael raised his arm instinctively. The impact shattered both bones in his forearm. He flew across the chamber and struck a wall hard enough to crack stone. Pain consumed everything. Kael screamed. Something changed. Deep inside his body, something that had remained silent for 3 years suddenly awakened. Not a voice, not a glowing screen, not some divine announcement. It felt more primitive than that. As though invisible chains had snapped around his bones, the agony in his shattered arm did not disappear. Instead, his body absorbed it. His muscles tightened, his heartbeat thundered. Strength flooded through limbs that should have been useless. Kael stared at his broken arm, then at his other hand. He pushed himself upright. The Crimson Ogre attacked again. Its fist smashed directly into Kael's chest. Ribs broke, his lungs compressed. Kael slammed into the ground. More pain, more strength. This time, the change was unmistakable. His fingers dug into solid stone. The floor cracked beneath them. Kael froze. For 3 years, everyone had misunderstood pain conversion, including him. Pain was not supposed to heal him. Pain was fuel. Every injury converted suffering into physical power. And something about being brought to the edge of death had finally unlocked the ability completely. The Crimson Ogre raised its foot to crush his skull. Kael rolled aside. The massive heel exploded against the floor. He moved faster than before. Far faster, the ogre swung downward. Kael blocked with his already broken arm. Another fracture. Another explosion of agony. Another surge. He stumbled backward, staring at the monster. A strange smile slowly appeared on his blood-covered face. The Crimson Ogre roared. Kael laughed. Do it again. The monster charged. Its fist hit his shoulder. Something snapped. Kael remained standing. The ogre hesitated. For the first, confusion appeared in its tiny black eyes. Kael punched it. His fist struck the monster's stomach. The Crimson Ogre's enormous body folded around the impact. A shockwave burst through the chamber. The creature flew backward and smashed through a pillar. Kael stared at his own hand. That punch had been stronger than anything Darius had ever produced, and Darius was a C-rank swordsman. The Crimson Ogre dragged itself from the rubble. Kael walked toward it. His body was destroyed. His stomach was bleeding. His ribs were fractured. His left arm hung uselessly. Every breath felt like swallowing broken glass. Yet beneath all that suffering was power. Terrifying power. The monster lunged. Kael stepped inside its reach and drove his fist upward. The blow shattered the ogre's jaw. Before it could fall, Kael grabbed its wrist. The arm was thicker than his torso. It no longer mattered. Kael twisted. Bone cracked. The ogre screamed. Kael pulled harder and threw the 4-meter monster over his shoulder. Its back struck the floor. The entire chamber trembled. Kael climbed onto its chest. One punch, the ogre's nose collapsed. 2. Teeth scattered across the floor. 3. Its skull fractured. 4. The stone beneath its head cracked. 5. Silence. Kael remained there, breathing heavily. Blood dripped from his knuckles. The Crimson Ogre was dead. A creature that should have required an entire C-rank party to defeat had been beaten to death by the weakest porter in the guild. Kael slowly stood. Then his strength vanished. His legs buckled. He fell beside the corpse. So the power did not remove the consequences. That was important. Pain conversion made him stronger when injured, but his wounds remained real. If he lost too much blood, he would still die. If his heart stopped, strength meant nothing. Power without survival was useless. Kael tore fabric from his shirt and pressed it against his stomach. He needed a healer. Unfortunately, the people who had abandoned him were probably already halfway back to the city. Then he noticed something beneath the Crimson Ogre's corpse. A faint silver glow. Kael pushed the enormous body aside with the last remnants of his temporary strength. Embedded in the stone was a small black crystal. His breath stopped. A monster core, but not a normal one. Ordinary Crimson Ogres produced red cores. This one was black. Kael touched it. The crystal dissolved. Cold energy surged through his fingers and entered his bloodstream. Every wound in his body burned. Kael screamed. His back arched. Then the pain stopped. He opened his eyes. His broken arm was still broken. His ribs were still damaged. Yet he could feel something new. The power produced by pain conversion had not completely disappeared. A fraction remained. Permanent. Kael tested his grip against a loose stone. It shattered. His eyes widened. Pain conversion had another secret. Injury created temporary strength, but surviving extreme damage allowed his body to permanently retain part of that power. Kael began laughing. Quietly at first, then uncontrollably. 3 years. 3 years of humiliation. 3 years of carrying bags for men weaker than what he had just become. 3 years of being called trash because nobody understood what his ability required. His power had never been useless. It simply demanded something horrifying before revealing itself. Suffering. Kael forced himself toward the exit. Each step was torture. He welcomed everyone. Hours later, the gates of Blackridge City appeared through the rain. 2 guards spotted him. One nearly dropped his spear. Kael? Kael looked down at himself. His clothes were soaked in blood. His left arm was bent unnaturally. There was dried blood around his mouth. He probably looked like a corpse refusing to understand that it was dead. The Iron Fang party reported you killed, the guard said. Kael smiled. Did they? The guild hall was crowded when Darius returned. He had played his role beautifully. The expedition had been tragic. The Crimson Ogre had appeared unexpectedly. Kael had courageously volunteered to distract it while the others escaped. Darius had even lowered his head while describing the poor porter's final moments. Mira cried. Ren looked devastated. Bolton drank free ale offered by sympathetic hunters. The guild receptionist finished recording the death report. 12 gold crowns would be distributed after the investigation. Darius accepted condolences with impressive humility. Then the guild doors opened. Nobody noticed at first. Rain and wind entered the hall. A hunter near the entrance turned. His mug slipped from his hand. The crash drew attention. Conversation died. Kael stood in the doorway, blood covered. Broken. Myra's face became white. Bolton stopped chewing. Ren stepped backward. Darius stared as though death itself had walked into the building. Kael entered slowly. Every hunter moved aside. His damaged boots left red footprints across the wooden floor. He stopped in front of Darius. Neither man spoke. Then Kael placed something on the table. A broken crimson horn. The guild examiner recognized it immediately. Crimson ogre. Whispers erupted. Kael looked at Darius. You forgot something in the dungeon. Darius's hand drifted toward his sword. Kael noticed, so did everyone else. The guildmaster emerged from his office. What happened? Darius answered immediately. He's confused. Blood loss. He must have escaped after we left. Kael laughed softly. You mean after you stabbed me? Silence. Mira shouted, lie. Kael turned toward her. She stopped. Something in his eyes frightened her. Not anger, not madness. Certainty. The guildmaster ordered guards to separate them. Kael did not resist. He spent the night receiving treatment while investigators questioned the Iron Fang party. There was no proof. Darius knew dungeon corridors had no witnesses. By morning, the case had become one man's accusation against four. The guild issued temporary suspensions, nothing more. Darius found Kael outside the infirmary. His smile was gone. You should have died. Kael's arm was wrapped in a splint. Bandages covered his chest and abdomen. He looked weak again. That reassured Darius. You're still trash, Darius whispered. Whatever miracle saved you won't happen twice. Kael studied him, then deliberately pressed 2 fingers against one of his fractured ribs. Pain flashed through him. Power surged into his muscles. Darius did not notice. Kael smiled. Maybe. Darius stepped closer. You accuse me again without evidence, and I'll finish what that ogre couldn't. Kael leaned forward. Next time, stab deeper. Darius frowned. Kael walked away. He had learned something during treatment. Minor injuries produced minor increases. Severe injuries produced enormous increases. The multiplier depended on intensity. A bruise barely mattered. A fracture transformed him. Near-fatal damage had multiplied his physical power by something approaching 100 times. But there was another discovery. His body adapted. The injuries he had survived once became slightly easier to endure again. Pain was strengthening him. Survival was refining him. And permanent growth meant tomorrow's injured Kael would be stronger than yesterday's injured Kael. The possibilities were monstrous. Over the next 2 weeks, Kael disappeared. People assumed he was recovering. He was training. He rented an abandoned warehouse outside Blackridge. Every morning began with ordinary conditioning. Running, push-ups, sword swings, weight training. Then came pain, controlled pain. Kael quickly discovered that recklessness was not courage. Breaking random bones would eventually cripple or kill him. He needed precision. He learned anatomy. He studied healing times. He experimented with bruising, muscle damage, exhaustion, shallow cuts, heat, cold, and impact trauma. Pain conversion responded differently to each. Muscular damage increased raw strength. Joint injuries seemed to sharpen reflexive stabilization. Blood loss produced an alarming increase in speed but weakened his concentration. Burns amplified endurance more efficiently than blunt trauma. Fractures gave the largest immediate physical boost short of life-threatening wounds. Kael began building a combat method around one horrifying principle. The longer someone fought him, the worse their chances became. A normal fighter weakened as damage accumulated. Kael strengthened. The safest moment to defeat him was before landing the first blow. After that, every attack became an investment in the attacker's own destruction. 3 weeks after the dungeon incident, Kael entered the guild. A notice had been posted. Blackridge was hosting its annual Hunter Advancement Examination. Successful applicants could rise in rank. Darius was participating, so was Bolton. Kael wrote his name. The receptionist stared at the application. You're applying for combat evaluation? Yes. You're currently registered as an F-rank porter. I know. She glanced at his ability classification. Pain conversion. No measurable combat application. You understand applicants can be seriously injured? Kael smiled. I was hoping so. The preliminary examination began that afternoon. Strength testing came first. Kael deliberately performed slightly above average, enough to qualify. Not enough to attract attention. Speed was similar. Man output showed almost nothing. Several examiners shook their heads. Then came combat. Applicants entered an arena and fought summoned constructs designed to measure battle capability. Kael received a Stonehound, an E-rank opponent. Spectators barely watched. The construct charged. Kael allowed it to bite his forearm. Pain. Strength. He punched through its skull. The arena became quiet. The examiner looked at the destroyed construct. Then at Kael. Next level. A steel hound. It slashed Kael's chest. He grabbed its head and smashed it into the floor. Next, 2 steel hounds. Kael defeated them, then 3, then a C-rank iron ape. The creature struck Kael hard enough to launch him across the arena. People gasped. Kael stood. He wiped blood from his mouth. The iron ape charged again. Kael met it halfway. Their fists collided. Metal buckled. The construct's arm exploded at the elbow. Kael tore off its remaining arm and drove it through the creature's chest. No one spoke. Darius was watching now. Kael turned toward the observation platform. Their eyes met. For the first time since they had known each other, Kael saw fear in Darius Crow's face. The examiner swallowed. Applicant Kael Veyron has passed preliminary combat qualification. Kael raised one hand. I'm not finished, the examiner blinked. Kael pointed toward the reinforced gate used only for high-level evaluations. Give me the strongest construct you have. Laughter erupted from several veteran hunters. The examiner refused. Kael insisted. Eventually, the guildmaster appeared. You understand that the next construct is calibrated for B-rank combat? Yes, it could kill you. Kael looked toward Darius. Good. The reinforced gate opened. A massive armored knight stepped into the arena. Mana flames burned behind its helmet. The audience leaned forward. Kael rolled his shoulders. The knight vanished. Its fist struck his chest. Kael heard ribs break. His body flew across the arena. He hit the barrier. The construct appeared before him and punched again. His shoulder dislocated. Again, blood filled his mouth. Again, his vision blurred. People began shouting for the examiner to stop the match. The guildmaster raised his hand. Then he noticed Kael. The young man was smiling. The knight attacked once more. Kael caught its fist. The arena floor cracked beneath his feet. The construct tried pulling away. It could not. Kael's fingers tightened. Metal screamed. He crushed the knight's hand. Then he pulled it closer. His forehead smashed into its helmet. The enchanted steel dented. Kael struck again. And again and again, the B-rank construct staggered. Kael grabbed its waist. Spectators rose from their seats. With broken ribs and a dislocated shoulder, an F-rank porter lifted a B-rank combat construct above his head. Kael threw it. The knight smashed through the reinforced barrier. Dust swallowed half the arena. When it cleared, the construct was buried inside the wall. Kael stood alone. Blood ran from his nose. One arm hung uselessly. He looked toward Darius, then he smiled. The guildmaster whispered something to an examiner. The examiners stared at him in disbelief. A moment later, the announcement echoed throughout the arena. Kael Veyron was no longer F-rank. His preliminary performance had qualified him for direct advancement consideration, potential rank. The hall exploded with noise. Kael barely heard it, because Darius was leaving. Kael watched him disappear through the doors. He knew that. Darius was not merely afraid. He was planning something, and Kael wanted him to. Because humiliation inside an arena was not enough. 12 gold crowns. That was the price Darius had placed on Kael's life. Kael intended to repay him with interest. That night, Darius entered a private room beneath the Blood Moon Tavern. 3 men waited inside. None belonged to the guild. The man sitting in the center wore a black serpent tattoo across his neck. Darius placed a bag of gold on the table. I need someone killed. The tattooed man opened the bag. Name? Kael Veyron. The assassin smiled when Darius looked toward the rain-covered window. Tonight, across Blackridge, Kael stood alone inside his warehouse. He had no idea assassins were already moving toward him. But as he wrapped his hands before another brutal training session, a strange anticipation crawled through his chest. For the first time in his life, Kael was beginning to understand the true nature of his gift. Pain did not merely make him stronger. Pain was teaching his body how to become something human beings were never meant to become. And somewhere in the darkness outside, 5 professional killers quietly surrounded the warehouse. Kael heard the first footstep on the roof. He smiled, finally. The first assassin came through the ceiling. Kael heard the roof tile crack half a heartbeat before the blade descended. He moved. Steel sliced through his shirt and carved a burning line across his shoulder instead of entering his neck. Pain flashed. Power answered. Kael seized the assassin's wrist before the man could retreat. The killer's eyes widened. Kael twisted. Bones snapped. The dagger hit the floor. Before the assassin could scream, Kael drove his forehead into the man's face. Cartilage collapsed. Blood sprayed across the warehouse wall. A second figure crashed through the window. Two more entered through the rear door. Another remained somewhere above him. 5. Professional formation. They had surrounded every escape route. Kael almost laughed. 3 weeks ago, 5 assassins would have meant death. Tonight, they had brought him exactly what he needed. Damage. The second killer flicked his wrist. 3 throwing knives crossed the warehouse. Kael avoided 2. He deliberately allowed the third to cut across his thigh. The wound was shallow, the increase was small. Still useful. He kicked the first assassin into a stack of wooden crates and charged. The killers reacted instantly. One swung a curved sword toward Kael's ribs. Kael blocked badly on purpose. The blade opened his forearm. Pain conversion surged. Kael's next punch landed against the assassin's chest. The man flew backward. Not stumbled, flew. His body struck a support beam hard enough to splinter the wood. The remaining killers froze. That hesitation lasted less than a second. It was enough. Kael grabbed a training weight from the floor and hurled it. The iron disc crossed the room like a cannonball. One assassin ducked. The wall behind him exploded. "What ability is that?" someone shouted. Kael smiled. "You came to kill me without knowing?" The assassin on the roof finally attacked. A thin needle entered Kael's neck. He ripped it out. The tip was coated in green liquid. Poison new. Heat spread beneath his skin. His heartbeat accelerated. His vision trembled. Pain conversion responded violently. Every poisoned nerve became another source of suffering. Power flooded his body so rapidly that the wooden floor cracked beneath his feet. The assassins stared. Their poison was supposed to weaken him. Instead, Kael straightened. The veins in his neck darkened. His breathing became ragged, but his smile widened. Interesting. The killer nearest the door stepped backward. Kael disappeared from his sight. A fist struck his stomach. The assassin folded. Kael caught him by the collar before he fell and threw him into another attacker. Both men crashed through the rear door. The poison continued burning through Kael's bloodstream. His strength kept rising, but this was dangerous. Pain conversion could turn poisoning into power. It could not prevent organ failure. He had minutes at best. So Kael stopped playing. The assassin with the curved sword attacked from his blind side. Kael caught the blade between both palms. The man pulled. Nothing happened. Kael squeezed. Steel snapped. The assassin stared at the broken weapon. Kael drove the jagged half through the man's sleeve and pinned him to a wooden pillar. Not his clothing. Kael wanted answers. "Who hired you?" Assassin spat at him. Kael punched the pillar beside his head. "Wood, second chance." Silence. Kael ripped the man free and threw him across the warehouse. Another assassin charged with twin daggers. Kael stepped forward. One dagger pierced his side. The other entered his shoulder. The killer smiled. Then Kael grabbed his face. "Thank you." He slammed the assassin into the floor. Twice. The third impact shattered the boards. The killer stopped moving. Kael ripped both daggers from his body. More blood. More pain. More strength. The last assassin inside the warehouse turned toward the window. Kael threw one of the daggers. It struck the wooden frame directly beside the man's face. He stopped. "Run," Kael said. The assassin stared at him. Kael pointed toward the darkness. "Go tell whoever hired you that you failed." Suspicion replaced fear. "You're letting me leave?" "No." Kael wiped blood from his side. "I'm letting you lead me back." The assassin's expression changed. Kael smiled. "Run." The man ran. Kael waited 10 seconds, then he followed. The poison was worsening. Every rooftop jump sent fire through his veins. His injured thigh burned. His shoulder bled. His ribs, still recovering from the advancement examination, protested with every landing. Pain conversion stacked everything together. Kael had never moved this fast. Blackridge became a blur beneath him. The assassin thought he was escaping. He never realized Kael was 3 rooftops behind. The trail ended at the Blood Moon Tavern. Kael crouched on a neighboring roof. The assassin entered through a side door. Minutes later, Darius emerged from the same building. Kael's expression became still. So simple, so predictable. Darius had tried killing him in a dungeon. That failed. Now he had hired professionals. Kael almost felt disappointed. He had hoped betrayal might make Darius more creative. Then the poison finally reached his lungs. Kael coughed. Blood splattered across his hand. The world tilted. He needed treatment immediately. Revenge could wait. Survival came first. Kael staggered toward the guild infirmary. He made it halfway, then collapsed in an alley. When he opened his eyes, morning sunlight was cutting through white curtains. Someone was sitting beside the bed, a woman with silver hair. Kael recognized her immediately. Seraphine Vale, one of Blackridge's highest-ranked hunters, a rank, the Silver Saint. Her healing ability was famous enough that nobles traveled across kingdoms to request treatment. Kael had seen her twice before. She had never spoken to him. Now she was studying him as if he were an unidentified monster. "You should be dead," she said. Kael's throat felt like sand. "I hear that often." Seraphine did not smile. "You were poisoned with night viper extract. Your liver was failing. Your lungs were filling with blood. You had 3 stab wounds, 2 partially healed fractures, severe muscular trauma, and enough scar tissue to suggest repeated injuries over several weeks." Kael said nothing. "You were training by hurting yourself." "Not a question." Kael looked toward the window. Seraphine leaned forward. "What exactly is pain conversion useless?" Her eyes narrowed. Kael smiled. "That's what the guild records say. I watched you destroy a B-rank construct. Lucky punch. You shattered enchanted steel with your forehead, hard head." For the first time, irritation crossed her face. Then she placed 2 fingers against his chest. Healing energy entered his body. Kael felt warmth spreading through his ribs. The remaining pain faded. So did the power. Seraphine noticed his expression. There Kael looked at her. "When your pain decreased, your mana signature changed. That was impossible. No examiner had ever detected anything." Seraphine continued. "Your ability is not producing conventional mana. It seems to be converting neurological distress into some kind of reinforcement response." Kael's attention sharpened. "You can see it?" "Barely." She removed her hand. "You're using your own nervous system as fuel." Kael considered that. "Can it kill me?" "Yes," the answer came immediately. "Repeated trauma can kill anyone. Your ability may actually make you more vulnerable to reckless behavior, because strength can disguise how damaged you are." Kael remembered the Crimson Ogre. He had felt invincible while bleeding to death. Seraphine was right. "Then I need to increase what I can survive." She stared at him. "That is the most dangerous conclusion you could have drawn from what I just said." "It's also the correct one." Seraphine sighed. "You're insane, probably." She stood. "Then at least be scientifically insane." Kael looked at her. She placed a notebook on the bed. Inside were anatomical diagrams, recovery estimates, notes about pain response, circulatory shock, nerve damage, and safe rehabilitation. "If you insist on understanding this ability, stop experimenting like an idiot with a hammer." Kael flipped through the pages. "Why help me?" Seraphine paused near the door. "Because someone with your ability will either become one of the strongest hunters alive or die before winter." Then she left. Kael remained in the infirmary for 2 days. When he emerged, Darius had disappeared. So had Bolton. The guild investigators had searched the Blood Moon Tavern after Kael reported the assassination attempt. But the killers were gone. No contracts, no witnesses willing to speak. Again, Darius escaped punishment. Kael no longer cared. Legal punishment had stopped being interesting. Something larger was happening. The surviving assassin belonged to an underground organization called the Black Serpent. The Black Serpent did not normally accept petty murder contracts from C-rank hunters. Someone had allowed Darius access to them. Someone powerful. Kael wanted to know why. His answer arrived sooner than expected. 3 days later, the guildmaster summoned him. Inside the office waited Seraphine and 3 unfamiliar hunters. The guildmaster pushed a document across the desk. "A dungeon has appeared beneath Mount Vesper." Kael read the report. "Unknown classification. Mana density rising. 2 scouting teams missing. Possible evolving dungeon." Kael looked up. "Why show me?" "Because tomorrow we're sending an elite investigation party." The guildmaster pointed toward the 3 hunters, all B rank, then toward Seraphine. Finally, toward Kael. "And you." Kael laughed. "I haven't even received my official rank. You will." The guildmaster placed a new identification plate on the desk. B rank. Kael picked it up. 3 years as an F rank porter, 3 weeks to B rank. The guildmaster's expression remained serious. "This is not a promotion ceremony. Mount Vesper may become a dungeon break. If that happens, Blackridge could be destroyed." Kael stopped smiling. "How long? Possibly 5 days." The expedition departed before sunrise. Mount Vesper stood north of Blackridge, its summit hidden behind black clouds. The dungeon entrance had formed inside an abandoned silver mine. Kael felt something wrong the moment he approached. The air tasted metallic, mana pressed against his skin. Seraphine noticed him watching the entrance. Nervous? Curious. That's worse. The party entered. The first level contained no monsters. Only bodies, the missing scouts. They had not been eaten. They had been arranged. 10 corpses sat against the walls with their hands folded over their chests. Someone had placed silver coins over their eyes. One B-rank hunter whispered a curse. Seraphine crouched beside a corpse. These wounds were made by weapons. Kael examined the cuts, clean, precise. Human. The guildmaster's warning returned to him. Evolving dungeon. But monsters did not usually arrange bodies. They continued deeper. The second level was empty. The third contained burned equipment. The fourth contained a message carved into stone. Turn back. One hunter laughed nervously. Kael did not. On the fifth level, they found the first living person. Bolton. He was chained to a pillar. His face was swollen. Several fingers were missing. When he saw Kael, terror consumed him. No. Kael approached. Bolton began struggling against the chains. No, no, no. You shouldn't be here. Seraphine moved forward. Who did this? Bolton ignored her. His eyes remained fixed on Kael. He knows about you. Kael stopped. Who? The bishop? Silence. Bolton began crying. Darius told them. He told them everything. The ogre. The arena. The assassins. They wanted to know how your ability worked. Kael grabbed Bolton's shirt. Where is Darius? Bolton's lips trembled. Deeper. A sound echoed through the corridor. Clapping slow. Deliberate. Everyone turned. A man in white robes stood at the far end. A black serpent was embroidered across his chest. Seraphine immediately drew her sword. The Black Serpent. The man smiled. Welcome, Kael Veyron. The dungeon doors slammed shut behind the party. Runes ignited across the walls. The three B-rank hunters collapsed. Seraphine staggered. Kael felt crushing pressure descend upon his body. His knees bent. The robed man walked closer. We have waited generations for an ability like yours. Kael forced himself upright. You hired Darius? We encouraged him. The man smiled. Because pain conversion has appeared before. Kael's heartbeat stopped for an instant. The man continued. 317 years ago, a hunter possessed an ability almost identical to yours. Kael struggled against the pressure. What happened to him? He became a calamity. The robed man raised one hand. The dungeon walls began trembling. He discovered that injury was only the first stage. Kael stared at him. The man's smile widened. Pain makes you stronger. Survival makes part of that strength permanent. You have already discovered both. Something enormous moved beneath the floor. But the third stage is why your ability was erased from history. The stone split open. Chains erupted from below and wrapped around Kael's arms and legs. Seraphine shouted his name. Kael fought. The chains tightened. Barbs pierced his skin. Pain conversion activated. His muscles expanded with power. The chains absorbed it. Kael froze. The robed man laughed. These restraints were created specifically for your predecessor. More chains emerged. They wrapped around Kael's chest, his neck, his waist. Then the floor opened completely. A chamber existed beneath them. At its center stood a massive black altar. And chained above that altar was Darius. He was alive, barely. His entire body had been mutilated. Kael stared upward. Darius opened one swollen eye. For the first time, there was no arrogance in his face, only terror. Kael. The robed man spread his arms. We needed someone you hated. Kael's blood turned cold. Darius began shaking. They said they would protect me. The bishop laughed softly. Hatred is such an efficient form of pain. Kael pulled against the chains. What do you want? To awaken the third stage. The bishop stepped toward Darius. A blade appeared in his hand. Kael understood. No, the bishop stabbed Darius through the leg. Kael felt nothing except disgust. The bishop frowned. Interesting. Another stab. Another scream. Kael remained still. You misunderstand me, Kael said. The bishop looked at him. I wanted revenge. Kael's eyes settled on Darius, but I don't care enough about him to suffer. Darius stared at him. Something almost like relief appeared on his ruined face. Then the bishop smiled again. I expected that. A second door opened. Two Black Serpent soldiers dragged someone into the chamber. Silver hair, blood-covered armor. Seraphine. Kael looked toward where she had been standing beside him. An illusion shattered. The Seraphine beside the expedition party dissolved into smoke. The real Seraphine was thrown onto the altar. Kael's expression changed. The bishop saw it. There Seraphine tried standing. One soldier kicked her down. Kael pulled against the chains. The barbs tore deeper. Strength exploded through him. The restraints absorbed it. The bishop raised his blade. Physical pain creates power. He placed the edge against Seraphine's throat. But emotional pain? Kael stopped breathing. That creates something else. The blade moved. Kael roared. Every chain around him shattered. The explosion demolished half the chamber. The bishop's smile vanished. Kael landed on the altar. His eyes were no longer normal. Dark veins spread across his face. His heartbeat sounded like thunder. The stone beneath his feet began melting from pressure alone. For the first time, pain conversion had activated without Kael receiving a physical injury. The bishop stepped backward. Kael looked at his hands. Power unlike anything he had ever experienced was moving through him. Not 10 times, not 50, not 100, something beyond measurement. Seraphine whispered his name. Kael looked toward the bishop. The man's confidence finally disappeared. Kael took one step. The entire dungeon shook. You wanted the third stage. The bishop raised both hands. Hundreds of runes ignited. Kael, you found it. Then something beneath the altar opened its eyes, and from far below the dungeon came a voice that had been sleeping for 300 years. Successor. The voice did not come from the walls. It came from beneath Kael's bones. Successor. The word rolled through his body like distant thunder. For a fraction of a second, the entire chamber seemed to disappear. The bishop vanished. Seraphine vanished. Darius vanished. Even the shattered chains around Kael's feet dissolved into darkness. Kael stood alone inside an endless black void. Then something enormous moved ahead of him. A man emerged from the dark. At least Kael thought it was a man. He was tall, broad-shouldered, covered in scars from throat to ankle. Some were thin and silver. Others were thick, twisted marks that looked as though entire chunks of flesh had once been torn away. One eye was missing. His left arm ended below the elbow. Yet the pressure coming from him made the bishop seem like a child. Kael could barely breathe. The stranger studied him. Kael frowned. The man laughed. Good, you're angry. Who are you? The scarred man walked closer. The fool whose mistakes created your prison. Kael immediately understood. The previous pain conversion user. Pain conversion. The man's expression turned contemptuous. That pathetic name. Kael waited. The stranger looked down at his own ruined body. My ability was called Infinite Adaptation. The darkness shifted. Images appeared around them. Battlefields, cities on fire, mountains split apart. Armies crushed beneath something moving too quickly to see. The scarred man stood at the center of every image. I thought pain was my power, too. He touched one of the scars across his chest. I was wrong. Kael remembered the bishop's words. 3 stages, physical injury, permanent growth, then emotional pain. What is it really? The stranger smiled. Kael said nothing. The man raised a hand. A memory unfolded. His younger self stood inside an arena, bloody and laughing while opponents attacked him. The first stage converts physical trauma into temporary reinforcement. Another scene appeared. The younger man survived a battle and awakened stronger days later. The second stage teaches your body to retain adaptations required to survive repeated stress. Then came something darker. A woman died in his arms. The scarred man screamed. The battlefield exploded. The third stage converts psychological trauma into systemic evolution. Kael felt cold. Your body stops strengthening one category at a time. The scarred man tapped Kael's chest. It begins rewriting everything. Muscle, bone, senses, reflexes, metabolism, perception, mana sensitivity, even instincts. Kael remembered what had happened when the bishop threatened Seraphine. That power had not felt like ordinary strength. It had felt as if his entire body had become a different creature. The scarred man's expression hardened. And that is when the ability becomes dangerous. To everyone else? To you. The answer came immediately. Kael narrowed his eyes. The stranger continued. Evolution does not care about your personality. It does not care what shape you want to keep. It does not care whether you wish to remain human. Kael looked at his own hands. The dark veins were still visible beneath his skin. If I keep using the third stage, you adapt to trauma. The stranger leaned closer. Eventually, your body may decide compassion is inefficient. Kael froze. Attachment can disappear. Pain itself can disappear. The man smiled without humor. And once pain disappears, guess what happens to an ability built around overcoming it? Kael understood. It seeks something worse. The stranger nodded. For me, it became loss. Images flooded the darkness, friends dying, cities collapsing, enemies slaughtered. The man growing stronger with every tragedy. I stopped protecting people. His voice became quieter. I began creating disasters because catastrophe made me stronger. Kael stared at him. That's why they erased you from history. No. The stranger's remaining eye turned toward him. They erased me because they could not kill me. The darkness cracked. Far away, Kael heard Seraphine shouting. The vision was ending. The scarred man grabbed Kael's shoulder. His grip was crushing. Listen carefully. Kael met his gaze. The Black Serpent does not worship me. The stranger's voice became urgent. They fear what is sleeping beneath this dungeon. What is it? The void trembled. A piece of me. Kael felt his stomach tighten. The man continued. When they finally imprisoned me, they They could not destroy my body. So they separated it. Images appeared. A heart sealed beneath a mountain. An arm buried beneath a desert. An eye imprisoned beneath an ocean. Bones locked beneath a fortress. Each piece pulsed with impossible power. My adaptation survived separation. The scarred man released Kael. The Black Serpent has spent centuries guarding the fragments. Why? To prevent them from choosing another host. The void shattered. Kael returned to the chamber. Only an instant had passed. The bishop still stood several meters away. Seraphine was still on the altar. Darius was still chained above them. But Kael now understood what lay beneath the stone. Not a monster, a fragment. The floor exploded. Something black erupted upward. It looked like a human hand. Only enormous, 6 meters from wrist to fingertips, covered in scar tissue. The severed hand crashed onto the altar. Every torch went out. Mana vanished from the air. The bishop screamed. Kael looked toward him. For the first time, true panic consumed the man's face. The hand moved. One finger twitched. Then another. The bishop shouted orders. Black Serpent soldiers flooded into the chamber. Kill him! They attacked Kael, too late. Kael moved. The first soldier swung a spear. Kael slipped beside it. His elbow entered the man's chest. Armor collapsed inward. A second soldier released lightning. Kael allowed it to hit. Electricity tore through his nerves. Pain conversion responded. His reflexes accelerated. The next bolt came. Kael watched it. Actually watched it. Lightning that had once been invisible became a crawling thread of white energy. Kael stepped aside. Seraphine stared. That's impossible. Kael grabbed the mage by the throat and threw him through 3 soldiers. The bishop activated a rune. Gravity multiplied. The floor collapsed beneath Kael. His knees bent. His spine screamed. Power surged. He straightened. The bishop increased it again. Stone pulverized around Kael. Kael kept walking. Stop. The bishop's voice cracked. Kael took another step. The pressure doubled. His bones groaned. Then adapted. The pain lessened. The bishop saw it happen. No, Kael smiled. You know what's funny? Another step. You understand my ability better than anyone. The bishop began retreating. But you still made the same mistake. Kael disappeared. He appeared directly in front of him. You hurt me, Kael punched. The bishop crossed both arms. The impact launched him across the chamber. His body smashed through a stone arch. Kael followed. The bishop rose instantly. His robes tore away. Underneath was black armor covered in serpent-shaped runes. His body expanded. Muscles thickened. Mana erupted from him. No. A rank. The pressure kept rising. Seraphine's expression changed. The bishop laughed. You thought I was helpless? Kael's smile disappeared. The bishop vanished. A fist struck Kael's face. His jaw cracked. Before he could react, another blow entered his stomach. Then his ribs, then his throat. The bishop moved faster than Kael could track. Kael crashed into the altar. Blood filled his mouth. The bishop grabbed his hair and slammed his face into stone. Again. Again. You are not him, Kael's skull rang. Another strike. You are an imitation. A knee broke Kael's ribs. You think suffering makes you special? The bishop lifted him by the throat. I spent 40 years studying suffering. His fingers tightened. Kael's vision darkened. The bishop whispered into his face, You are only a specimen. Kael smiled through bloody teeth. Then keep studying. He grabbed the bishop's wrist. Too slow, the bishop threw him. Kael flew across the room. His back struck the giant severed hand. The moment his blood touched its skin, the world changed. The fragment moved. Its fingers curled around Kael. Seraphine shouted. The bishop went pale. No, Kael felt something enter him, not mana. Memory, 1,000 battles, 1,000,000 injuries. Centuries of adaptation compressed into a single instant. His nervous system overloaded. Kael screamed. The severed hand began dissolving. Black particles poured into his wounds. The bishop sprinted forward. Separate them, Seraphine attacked. Her sword intercepted him. Their weapons collided. The shock wave knocked soldiers from their feet. Seraphine slid backward. Blood ran from her mouth. The bishop raised his blade. She blocked again. You're protecting something that will kill you. Seraphine gritted her teeth. Maybe. Another strike. But you're annoying me more. The bishop roared and drove her to one knee. Behind them, Kael convulsed. His body was changing. Old fractures hardened. Scar tissue reorganized. Damaged nerves repaired themselves. His heartbeat slowed, then accelerated. His muscles compressed instead of expanding. His eyes changed. The darkness of the chamber sharpened. He could see heat, mana, movement, micro-tremors in stone. The fragment was teaching his body adaptations learned by its original owner. Too many. Too fast, Kael felt himself disappearing under them. Emotion vanished first. Then hesitation. Then disgust, then mercy. The scarred man's warning returned. Your body may decide compassion is inefficient. Kael looked towards Seraphine. The bishop struck her across the face. She fell. Kael felt nothing. That terrified him more than pain ever had. He forced himself to remember the infirmary, the notebook, her irritation, her warning at least be scientifically insane. Something returned, small human. Kael grabbed onto it. The fragment fought him. Instinct demanded efficiency. Kill threats, ignore attachments, remove weakness. Kael clenched his fists. No, the black particles stopped. The chamber trembled. Kael spoke through gritted teeth. You're my power. The fragment pulsed. I'm not yours, he pulled. The remaining black energy entered his body violently. The giant hand collapsed into dust. Silence. Kael stood. His injuries were still visible. But something about him had changed. Not larger, not monstrous, calmer. The bishop sensed it immediately. He abandoned Seraphine and attacked Kael. A sword moved toward Kael's neck. Kael raised one hand. 2 fingers caught the blade. The bishop froze. Kael looked at the sword, then at him, too slow. He snapped the weapon. The bishop stepped backward. Kael advanced. The bishop punched. Kael moved his head 1 centimeter. The fist missed. Another punch, missed. A kick, missed. Every attack passed within inches. Kael's new perception read muscle tension before movement began. The bishop screamed and released a blast of mana. Kael crossed his arms. The explosion swallowed him. Stone melted. Seraphine shielded her eyes. When the smoke cleared, Kael was still standing. His skin was burned. Pain conversion activated. Kael. The burns began changing him. Heat resistance increased. The bishop saw it happen. This is impossible. Kael walked through the flames. You were right about one thing. He reached the bishop. I'm 1 punch. The bishop's armor cracked. 2nd punch. Runes shattered. 3rd. The breastplate exploded. 4th. The bishop vomited blood. Kael caught him before he fell. This is for the dungeon. A knee entered his stomach. This is for the assassins. An elbow shattered his shoulder. This is for Seraphine. Kael grabbed the bishop's robes, then paused. The bishop laughed weakly. What, mercy? Kael looked at him. No, he threw him toward Darius. The bishop crashed beneath the chained man. Darius stared down. Kael walked over. Your turn. Darius went white. The bishop tried crawling away. Darius looked at Kael, then at the man who had tortured him. Something broke in his expression. Hatred replaced fear. Kael tore the chains apart and lowered Darius. Darius could barely stand. Kael handed him a broken piece of steel. The former swordsman stared at it. You want me to kill him? Kael shook his head. I don't care what you do. That hurt Darius more. Kael turned away. Behind him, the bishop began begging, then screaming. Kael did not look back. He reached Seraphine. She was conscious. Barely. You look terrible, she whispered. Kael crouched. So do you. That was almost a joke. I'm adapting. She laughed and immediately coughed blood. Kael lifted her carefully. The remaining Black Serpent soldiers had fled. The dungeon was destabilizing. Cracks spread across the ceiling. They needed to leave. Then Darius screamed. Kael turned. The bishop was dead. But Darius was staring at something beneath the corpse. A Black Serpent symbol had appeared on the floor. It was glowing. Seraphine's expression changed. That isn't a rune. Kael felt it too. A signal. The symbol pulsed once, then projected an image into the air. 7 figures appeared, all wearing white robes, all with Black Serpent markings. The central figure had no face, only darkness beneath his hood. His voice filled the chamber. Fragment 7 has bonded. The other figures remained still. The hooded figure turned toward Kael. Even through the projection, Kael Veyron. Kael said nothing. We have been waiting. The projection shifted. A map appeared. 1 beneath Mount Vesper had gone dark. 6 remained. Kael understood immediately. 6 fragments, the figure continued. Collect them if you wish. Seraphine stared. It's a trap. Of course it is, Kael said. The hooded figure laughed. Every fragment will strengthen you. The map changed. Black points spread across kingdoms, but every fragment will also bring him closer to returning. Kael remembered the scarred man, a piece of me. What happens if I collect all 7? The hooded figure answered. You become complete. Kael's expression hardened. That wasn't my question. The projection flickered. Then came the real answer. He wakes up inside you. Silence. Seraphine looked at Kael. Darius backed away. The hooded figure raised one hand. Come find us, successor. The projection vanished. The dungeon shook violently. The ceiling began collapsing. Kael carried Seraphine toward the exit. Darius limped behind them. They climbed through 5 levels while the mountain tore itself apart. At the final corridor, a wall collapsed between Kael and Darius. Dust filled the passage. Kael turned. Darius was trapped on the other side. Kael! A second collapse blocked the route. Seraphine shouted, "We don't have time." Kael looked at the rubble. 3 years of humiliation, the dungeon betrayal, the assassination contract. Every reason to leave Darius there. Then he set Seraphine down. "What are you doing?" Kael placed both hands against the collapsed stone. "Making sure I choose what I become," he pushed. Pain tore through his still-injured body. Strength answered. The wall moved. Kael roared. Darius crawled underneath. Kael released it. The corridor collapsed behind them. They escaped seconds before Mount Vesper erupted. The dungeon entrance disappeared beneath thousands of tons of rock. Outside, dawn was breaking. Kael stood on the mountainside. Seraphine leaned against a tree. Darius sat in the mud. None of them spoke for a long time. Finally, Darius looked at Kael. Why? Kael knew what he meant. Why save him? Kael looked toward the sunrise. Because if I only become stronger when people suffer, then I need to decide what strength is for. Darius lowered his head. Kael walked away. Seraphine followed. Blackridge appeared in the distance. But the city was no longer safe. Somewhere beyond the horizon were 6 fragments. 6 Black Serpent sanctuaries. 6 opportunities for Kael to become stronger, and 6 chances for an ancient calamity to awaken inside him. Then Kael felt something pulse in his right hand once. Twice. The absorbed fragment was reacting. He stopped. Seraphine noticed. What? Kael looked south. Hundreds of kilometers away, something answered the pulse. Another fragment. Then another. Then another. All 6, the scarred man's voice whispered faintly inside his mind. They know you exist now. Kael smiled. Good. Far beyond Blackridge, inside a fortress buried beneath a frozen lake, one of the remaining fragments opened its eye. And an entire kingdom felt the earthquake. The frozen lake broke before Kael ever reached it. 300 kilometers south of Blackridge, beneath a kingdom that had not seen war in 50 years, something ancient moved under the ice. The first crack stretched across the lake like black lightning. Then another, then hundreds. Fishermen abandoned their nets and ran. Soldiers stationed along the shoreline shouted warnings. A bell rang from the nearby fortress. Then the center of the lake exploded. A column of water and shattered ice rose into the sky. Something enormous surfaced beneath it. Not a creature, an eye. A human eye large enough to fill a cathedral window. Its iris was silver black. It opened once. The entire shoreline collapsed. The shockwave flattened trees for kilometers. Inside Blackridge, Kael stopped walking. His absorbed fragment pulsed so hard that pain shot through his arm. Seraphine caught his expression. The lake? Kael another pulse. Stronger. He could feel direction now. Distance. Almost like a heartbeat calling to another heartbeat. Darius stood several steps behind them. He had said very little since Mount Vesper. His face remained bruised. His movements were stiff. The arrogance was gone. Kael still did not trust him. Trust was not something a rescue could magically restore. But Darius had information. That made him useful. For now, they returned to the guild by noon. Chaos had already begun. Messengers were arriving from neighboring territories. The guildmaster stood over a map covered in pins. When Kael entered, he looked relieved for exactly 1 second. Then his gaze fell on Darius. You brought him back? Kael placed Seraphine's arm over a healer's shoulder. He knows things. Darius laughed bitterly. I know enough to wish I didn't. The guildmaster shut the door. What happened? Kael told him everything. Not every detail. He kept the vision with the ancient predecessor to himself. He kept the warning about systemic evolution to himself. But he explained the fragments, the Black Serpent, the 6 remaining sanctuaries, the possibility that collecting all fragments could awaken the original host inside him. The guildmaster listened without interruption. When Kael finished, the room remained silent. Then Darius spoke. The Black Serpent calls the fragments the 7 remains. Kael turned. Darius stared at the map. I heard them talking while they tortured me. His voice stayed flat. They believed the original wielder became too powerful to destroy. So 7 kingdoms agreed to divide his body and seal each piece beneath a different territory. Seraphine, seated nearby while a healer wrapped her ribs, looked up. 7 kingdoms? Darius nodded. Most of them no longer exist. The guildmaster frowned. So the sanctuaries predate modern borders. Yes. Why preserve the pieces instead of scattering them somewhere unreachable? Darius looked at Kael. Because they were afraid distance wouldn't matter. The fragment pulsed again. Kael felt that truth immediately. The pieces wanted each other. The guildmaster studied him. Can you resist it? Kael answered after a pause. Yes. Seraphine looked at him. Kael met her eyes. She knew he was not certain. She did not expose him. The guildmaster placed both hands on the map. We need information before moving. No, Kael said. Everyone looked at him. Kael pointed south. Something already moved. A messenger burst into the office at that exact moment. His face was pale. Emergency report from the Kingdom of Thorn. The guildmaster took the sealed letter. He read. Then read again. What? Seraphine stood. The guildmaster placed the report on the table. Lake Ivar has ruptured. Darius went still. Kael looked at the southern marker. The messenger continued. The royal fortress is gone. How many dead? We don't know. Monster break? The messenger swallowed. Witnesses say an eye rose from the lake. Nobody spoke. Kael felt the fragment in his hand pulse again. The guildmaster looked at him. It's calling you. Yes, you're not going. Kael almost laughed. That wasn't a request. The guildmaster slammed a fist against the table. You just survived a collapsing dungeon and bonded with something that may contain a piece of an ancient calamity. Kael remained calm. And if I stay here? The guildmaster said nothing. Kael pointed at Blackridge on the map. What happens when the fragment comes to me? That changed the room. Seraphine stood fully. He's right. The guildmaster looked at her. If the fragments actively seek each other, waiting may turn Blackridge into the next Mount Vesper. Darius spoke quietly. The Black Serpent will also know where he is. Kael looked at him. Darius continued. They have ways of tracking fragment activity. Once the sanctuary broke, they probably felt the bond. So we move first. The guildmaster cursed. Your Kael smiled. On paper. 3 hours later, Kael left Blackridge. Seraphine came with him. Darius did too. Kael objected. Darius did not care. You need someone who knows Black Serpent procedure. You tried to murder me twice, I remember. And you think that builds confidence? No. Darius looked straight at him. I think staying alive long enough to help destroy the people who turned me into meat is the closest thing I have to a useful purpose. Kael studied him, then walked past. Keep up. They traveled south through the night. By dawn, refugees were already moving north. Families. Merchants, wounded soldiers, some carried nothing. Others dragged carts filled with everything they owned. Everyone told the same story. The lake had opened. The fortress had vanished. Something was moving beneath the water, and people near the shore had begun behaving strangely. One woman clawed her own face off. A soldier walked calmly into the lake and never returned. A child stared at the water for 6 hours without blinking. Seraphine grew more concerned with every account. This isn't physical. Kael felt it too. The fragment in his arm was warm, not painful, hungry. By evening, they reached the northern checkpoint of Thorn. Soldiers blocked the road. No one enters. Kael showed his guild identification. The captain barely glanced at it. Orders from the crown. Seraphine displayed hers. The captain changed immediately. A rank authority still mattered. They were escorted to a military camp several kilometers from Lake Ivar. The scale of destruction became visible there. Half the horizon was covered in mist. Not natural fog, manna, dense enough to glow. The ground trembled every few minutes. Inside the command tent waited a royal officer with bloodshot eyes. Thank the gods. He looked at Seraphine, then at Kael. His expression fell. This is the specialist sat? No. The officer frowned. I'm the problem. The room went silent. Seraphine pinched the bridge of her nose. You enjoy that far too much, Kael smiled. The officer did not. He spread maps across the table. The eyes surfaced 19 hours ago. He pointed. Fortress Ivar was here. Nothing remained on the map except a black mark. 600 soldiers stationed inside. Survivors? Seraphine asked. 12. What did they see? The officer hesitated. Different things. Kael leaned forward, explain. One soldier claims the lake spoke with his dead mother's voice. Another map. Another insists he saw himself standing beneath the water. Another. 3 attacked rescue teams because they believed everyone around them had been replaced. Seraphine looked toward Kael. Psychological adaptation. Kael remembered the 3rd stage, emotional pain. Systemic evolution. Maybe the eye did not attack bodies. Maybe it attacked perception. The officer continued. We attempted magical bombardment. Result? The lake absorbed it. Artillery, same. Approach by air? The officer's jaw tightened. Every flying creature turned toward the eye and descended into the water. Darius whispered, fragment influence. Kael looked at him. You've seen this? No, Darius swallowed. But I heard them call the eye the witness. That name felt wrong. Why witness? Because it sees what hurts you most. Silence. Kael looked toward the lake. The fragment in his arm pulsed again. This time something pulsed back, inside his skull. He saw an image, a thin, 18 years old, standing before an awakening crystal while everyone laughed. Useless. Kael blinked. The image disappeared. Seraphine noticed. It started. The officer looked confused. What? Kael stood. The lake is looking at me. They moved at midnight. The military refused to send soldiers. Kael did not blame them. He, Seraphine, and Darius approached alone. The closer they came, the quieter the world became. No insects, no birds, no wind. Lake Ivar appeared between the trees, or what remained of it. The water had receded, revealing kilometers of black mud. At the center floated the eye. It did not belong to a skull. It simply existed, suspended above the water. Watching Kael's fragment burned, the eye turned toward him. Immediately, the world changed. Kael was back inside the awakening hall, 3 years earlier. People laughed. The examiner shook his head. Pain conversion. No measurable combat value. Useless. The humiliation felt fresh. Kael knew it was an illusion. That did not make it harmless. The eye showed him everything. Hunters shoving bags into his arms, Darius mocking him, Mira laughing. Bolton kicking his hand away from the dungeon door. Kael's fists tightened. The scene shifted. The Crimson Ogre, the sword entering his stomach. Darius whispering that his life was worth 12 gold crowns. Then something changed. Kael saw himself die. Not what had happened. What could have happened? His corpse lying alone in the dungeon. His name forgotten. The guild compensation distributed. Darius drinking with the others. Nothing changing. Nobody caring. The eye pushed harder. Kael's third stage began responding. His body warmed, emotion sharpened, rage rose. Power followed. Kael forced it down. The illusion trembled. The eye showed another image, Seraphine dead. Her silver hair dark with blood. Kael stopped. His heartbeat changed. The fragment recognized emotional trauma. Power surged. Kael clenched his teeth. This isn't real. Seraphine's corpse opened her eyes. You always say that when you're afraid. Kael froze. The voice was perfect. The illusion continued. You saved Darius because you wanted to prove you were human. Her dead hand grabbed his wrist. But what happens when being human becomes inconvenient? Kael's body changed again. Dark veins spread up his neck. He felt the adaptation reaching for emotion, trying to remove fear, trying to remove attachment. Kael remembered the scarred predecessor. Compassion can disappear. The eye wanted him stronger. That was the trap. Not death. Uncontrolled growth. Kael closed his eyes. The illusion did not disappear, so he stopped resisting the pain. He let himself feel it. Humiliation, betrayal, fear, attachment, anger. Every wound that could not be bandaged. But this time he refused to convert it immediately. For the first time since awakening his true ability, Kael endured pain without using it as fuel. The power inside him screamed. The fragment demanded adaptation. Kael whispered no. The dead Seraphine frowned. Kael opened his eyes. You don't get to decide what I stop feeling. The illusion cracked. The awakening hall shattered. The dungeon shattered. Seraphine's corpse shattered. Kael returned to Lake Ivar. He was on one knee. Blood ran from his nose. The real Seraphine stood several meters away, trapped inside her own illusion. She was crying. Kael had never seen her cry. Darius was screaming at someone who did not exist. The eye watched all three. Kael stood. Every step toward the lake increased the pressure. Memories attacked him. The examiner's laughter, the ogre, the bishop, the scarred predecessor, the possibility of losing himself. He kept walking. The water moved around his boots. The eye expanded. A voice entered his head. Become immune, stopped. That was the temptation. Become immune to humiliation, immune to fear, immune to grief. Immune to love, never hurt again. His ability could do it. Maybe that was what the previous wielder had done. Not because he was evil, because eventually, pain became exhausting. Kael looked at the eye. No, the voice returned. Kael smiled. No. Pain is inefficiency. No, pain is what makes you controllable. Kael walked deeper into the water. Pain is how I know I still care. The eye widened. The lake exploded. Psychic pressure slammed into Kael. Every painful memory returned at once. His knees buckled. Blood poured from his mouth, not physical blood loss from wounds. His body was simply failing under neurological overload. Pain conversion erupted 100 times. Maybe more, Kael screamed. The water around him blasted outward. The eye attacked harder. Kael's vision split into thousands of possible futures. Seraphine dying. Blackridge burning. Darius betraying him again. The guild hunting him. The fragments consuming him, himself becoming the ancient calamity. Every future hurt. Every future strengthened him. Too much. Kael's body began adapting faster than he could control. His senses expanded. He heard heartbeats kilometers away. He saw mana currents beneath the lake. He felt emotions like pressure changes in the air. Then the most dangerous adaptation began, detachment. His fear started fading. That panic helped. He held on to it. Fear was proof. He looked back. Seraphine was still trapped. Darius was on his knees. Kael forced himself to remember their names. Seraphine, Darius Crow, Blackridge, the guildmaster. The guards who recognized him when he returned bloody from the dungeon. Specific things. Small things. The adaptation slowed. The eye trembled. Kael reached it. The enormous iris focused entirely on him. He placed one hand against its surface. The world became white. Then he saw the predecessor again. Not the scarred vision. The real memory stored inside the fragment. The man stood surrounded by bodies. Friends. Strangers. He looked exhausted. Someone begged him to stop. He answered calmly. I don't feel anything anymore. Kael understood that had been the moment he lost. Not when he destroyed cities. Not when he became a calamity. When pain stopped mattering. Kael looked directly into the memory. I won't become you. The predecessor turned. For one impossible second, the memory seemed to see him. Then it smiled. Then prove it. The eyes shattered. Silver light exploded across Lake Ivar. Kael was thrown backward. Seraphine woke from her illusion. Darius collapsed. The enormous eye cracked into thousands of fragments. But instead of falling, they turned toward Kael. Seraphine shouted, Kael! He tried moving. The shards entered his body. Everyone. Pain beyond description tore through him. His vision went black. When he woke, he was underwater. Deep. Far deeper than Lake Ivar should have been. Darkness surrounded him. He could breathe, no. He realized he was not breathing. His body had adapted. For a few seconds, his metabolism had slowed enough to survive without oxygen. Kael almost laughed. Then he saw the second fragment floating below him. The eye had only been its guardian. The actual fragment was smaller. A human eye. Silver iris. Black pupil. It stared at him. Kael swam closer. The fragment entered his forehead. Pain struck, then vision. Not ordinary sight. Possibilities, micro-expressions, muscle intentions, emotional disturbances. Not future sight. Something more dangerous. Prediction through perfect observation. Kael saw the water currents before they moved. Saw falling debris before it shifted. Saw his own muscles preparing to swim, the witness. Now he understood the name. It did not see the future. It saw so much of the present that the future became obvious. Kael surfaced. Seraphine was waiting. She grabbed him and dragged him onto the shore. Kael coughed water. I thought I adapted. You can still drown, apparently. She punched his shoulder. Pain flashed. A tiny burst of strength appeared. Kael smiled. Seraphine stared at him. What? Nothing. Darius approached slowly. His face looked older. What did you see? Enough. Darius laughed once. The lake was calm now. The giant eye was gone. The mist began clearing. Military scouts approached from the forest. Kael looked south. 2 fragments now lived inside him. 5 remained, but something had changed. The second fragment had given him more than perception. It had given him access to another memory. A location. Not the next fragment. A place connected to all 7. The original prison. And someone was already there. Kael saw the image clearly. A throne beneath a ruined city. The hooded leader of the Black Serpent seated before a sealed black coffin. Around him stood hundreds of white-robed followers. The coffin was opening. Not fully. Just enough for one hand to reach through. A living hand. The predecessor's voice whispered inside Kael. They are not waiting for you to collect the fragments. Kael's expression hardened. Seraphine noticed. What is it? Kael looked toward the western horizon. They found another way to wake him. Far away, beneath the ruined city, the black coffin opened another inch. A scarred finger curled around its edge. And the hooded leader bowed. Welcome back, First Calamity. The western sky turned black 3 days later. Not with clouds, with birds. Thousands of them fled east in a single screaming mass. Kael watched from the ridge above the military road, while Seraphine tightened the straps on her armor. That's not migration, she said. No. Darius looked toward the horizon. They're running from something. Kael felt the answer before he saw it. The 2 fragments inside him pulsed together once, twice. Then a third rhythm answered from far away. Not another fragment, something older. Something connected to all of them. The original prison. The ruined city beneath which the Black Serpent had gathered. Kael closed his eyes. The witness sharpened his perception. For a brief second, distance became meaningless. He saw mana currents stretching beneath the continent like veins. Most were faint. Some connected cities. Some followed enormous black current ran west. At its end sat a dead city. And beneath that city, something was waking. Kael opened his eyes. We don't have much time. Seraphine gave him a dry look. You say that before every terrible decision. Then I'm consistent. Darius almost smiled. Almost they had changed after Lake Ivar. Not dramatically. There had been no sudden forgiveness. No friendship born from danger. Kael still slept with one eye open when Darius was nearby. Darius still avoided looking at Kael for too long. But something had settled between them. Debt. Not the kind measured in gold. The kind measured in choices. Darius had betrayed Kael. Kael had saved him. Neither man knew what that meant yet. The road west passed through abandoned villages. Doors hung open, meals remained on tables. Animals wandered without owners. No bodies, that was worse. At the fourth village, they found writing across the central well. Come home, the letters were painted in blood. Seraphine examined them. Darius looked around. Black Serpent recruitment. Kael turned. They emptied entire villages? They call it pilgrimage. To what? Darius stared west. To the First Calamity. Kael felt irritation rise. The first fragment reacted. His muscles tightened. He forced the response down. Every emotion now carried danger. That was the problem with becoming stronger through suffering. Eventually, ordinary anger could become a weapon. And weapons had consequences. They continued. By sunset, they found the pilgrims. Hundreds. Men, women, children. All walking west. Barefoot. Silent, some were bleeding from their feet. None seemed to care. Seraphine approached a woman carrying an infant. Where are you going? The woman smiled. Home, where is home, where pain ends? Kael's expression hardened. The phrase hit too close. He stepped closer. The witness showed him details, dilated pupils, slow breathing, low signs of coercion, no obvious poison. But their mana patterns were synchronized. Not identical, linked. Kael touched the woman's wrist. A pulse entered his hand, not physical. Emotional grief. The woman had lost someone. A husband. He did not know how he knew. He simply felt the shape of the wound. Then a voice whispered through her. You understand. Kael pulled his hand away. The woman smiled wider. You more than anyone, Seraphine noticed. What happened? They're connected to him. To the predecessor? Kael nodded. The woman continued walking. The entire procession followed. Darius whispered. The Black Serpent calls this the queeding. Kael looked at him. They remove pain? No, Darius swallowed. They give it somewhere else to go. Kael understood immediately. Into the First Calamity. Hundreds of people surrendering grief. Fear, regret, trauma. Feeding it. His stomach turned the third stage. Psychological suffering converted into systemic evolution. The Black Serpent had found a way to nourish the original host without restoring all 7 fragments. Seraphine understood too. They're using people as fuel. Yes, Kael looked at the horizon. And there are probably thousands more. They moved faster. By midnight, the ruined city came into view. Its name had once been Valtheris. 2 centuries ago, it had been a capital. Now half its towers were broken. Walls leaned inward. Nature had reclaimed streets. But tonight the ruins were alive. Torches covered every road. Pilgrims entered through all 4 gates. White-robed Black Serpent priests directed them underground. Kael counted patrols, hundreds. More, the witness kept finding movement. Rooftops. Tunnels. Mana signatures beneath stone. This isn't a cult, Seraphine whispered. Darius looked pale. It's an army. Kael studied the city. 3 routes to the underground prison, main temple. Collapsed royal crypt. The crypt had the fewest guards. 2 trap. The aqueduct had rotating patrols. The main temple was suicide. Kael smiled. Seraphine saw it. No, I didn't say anything, you smiled. That's not evidence. With you it is, Darius exhaled. We take the aqueduct. Kael looked at him. Why? Because the crypt is bait. Kael raised an eyebrow. Darius continued. Black Serpent doctrine. They leave one obvious weak point for infiltrators. Anyone competent sees it. Anyone arrogant takes it. Seraphine looked at Kael. Definitely bait then. Kael ignored her. They entered through the aqueduct. The first patrol died quietly. Not dead, unconscious. Kael had become better at controlling force. That improvement mattered. Before, every injury made him stronger. Now every fight also taught restraint. Pain conversion could turn him into a monster. Control was how he remained a man. The second patrol carried enchanted chains. Kael recognized the design. The same type used at Mount Vesper. The moment he saw them, the first fragment inside him reacted. Hatred, fear, memory. Strength began rising. Kael forced it down. Not yet. One guard threw a chain. Kael caught it. Runes ignited. The metal began draining reinforcement energy. Kael smiled. The guard's confidence returned. Then Kael pulled. The man flew across the tunnel and collided with the wall. Kael examined the chain. It had been designed against the original pain conversion wielder. Useful. He wrapped it around his forearm. Seraphine stared. You're keeping it? If something can hurt me, I want to understand it. That sentence summarizes everything wrong with you. They reached the lower city before dawn. The underground structure was enormous. Not a prison, a buried palace. Black columns supported vaulted ceilings. Statues lined the corridors. Every statue depicted the same scarred man. Some showed him kneeling. Some chained, some worshipped, some surrounded by bodies. Darius looked sick. They made him a religion. No, Kael said. The witness sharpened. He studied inscriptions carved beneath the statues. They made him a warning. Seraphine looked closer. The inscriptions were ancient. She translated slowly. Pain survives flesh. Suffering survives memory. Power survives death. Then one final, the vessel. Kael stared at it. The Black Serpent had not always worshipped the First Calamity. Originally, they had guarded against him. Something had changed. They descended. The air became warmer. Then came the heartbeat. Boom. Dust fell from the ceiling. Boom. Seraphine froze. Kael shook his head. Boom. The fragments inside him answered. The first pulse strengthened his arm. The second sharpened his vision. Kael felt them trying to synchronize. He resisted. They reached a balcony. Below them opened a chamber large enough to hold an army. Thousands of pilgrims knelt in concentric circles. At the center stood the black coffin, the same one from Kael's vision. 7 massive chains bound it to the floor. 6 were intact. 1 was broken, the fragment from Mount Vesper. Kael understood. Each chain corresponded to a fragment. As fragments bonded elsewhere, the prison weakened. But 1 chain was already broken without a fragment returning. The Black Serpent had found another method. The hooded leader stood beside the coffin. Kael Veyron. His voice carried across the chamber. Every pilgrim raised their head. Seraphine whispered a curse. Darius stepped backward. Kael did not move. The hooded man looked directly toward the balcony. You arrived exactly when expected. Guards filled the exits. Hundreds. Darius drew his sword. Definitely a trap. Kael looked at him. You're learning. The hooded leader raised one hand. Nobody attacked. Instead, he removed his hood. He was young. That surprised Kael. Dark hair. Pale scars, no visible mutations. His eyes were normal. My name is Lucian Vale. Seraphine went rigid. Kael turned toward her. She looked as though someone had stabbed her. No. Lucian smiled. Hello, sister. Kael looked between them. Seraphine's breathing changed. The witness caught everything. Shock. Recognition. Fear. Grief. Pain conversion inside Kael reacted to her emotions through resonance. He suppressed it. Seraphine whispered, You died. Lucian descended the steps toward the coffin. That was the story. You died 12 years ago. No, his smile disappeared. I was chosen. Seraphine's face became white. Kael suddenly understood why she had recognized unusual energy around pain conversion so quickly. Why she knew neurological reinforcement. Why she had helped him. There was history here. Lucian continued. Our father brought me to the Black Serpent when I awakened. Seraphine shook her head. He said you were killed in a dungeon. He lied. Her sword trembled. Kael felt anger rising around her like heat. Lucian looked at Kael. My sister never told you? Kael said nothing. Seraphine turned toward him. I didn't know. I believe you. The words came immediately. Seraphine looked almost startled. Lucian laughed. How touching. Kael's eyes moved to the coffin. What ability did you awaken? Lucian's expression changed. Good. Kael had hit something. Resonance. The answer explained too much. Lucian walked among the kneeling pilgrims. I feel what others feel. He touched one man's head. The pilgrim began crying. I can transfer emotion. Another touch. The man stopped. Lucian's own smile widened. I can amplify it. The kneeling crowd shuddered. And eventually, I learned to move suffering from one vessel into another. Kael stared at the coffin. You're feeding him. Why? Lucian looked genuinely surprised. Because pain is the only honest force in this world. Seraphine, you sound insane. Lucian turned toward her. You became a healer. His voice softened. You should understand better than anyone. I heal pain, and what happens after? She said nothing. People return to war, betrayal, greed. Loss. Lucian spread his arms. You heal symptoms. He touched the coffin. I intend to end the disease. Kael almost laughed. You think waking him ends suffering? Lucian looked toward him. No. I think he can absorb it. Kael froze. Lucian smiled. The First Calamity did not become monstrous because he felt too much. Kael remembered the predecessor's warning. Lucian continued. He became monstrous because he learned to survive what no human should survive. That's not better. It is necessary. Lucian raised both hands. The pilgrims began trembling. Grief flooded the chamber. Kael staggered, not his grief. Theirs, thousands of lives, dead children. Lost partners, disease, hunger. War, abuse, failure. Loneliness. The emotional pressure struck him like a tidal wave. Pain conversion responded. His third stage ignited. Kael roared. Dark veins spread across his skin. Lucian watched with fascination. Yes. Seraphine grabbed Kael's arm. Fight it, Kael heard her, barely. The suffering kept entering him. His body began adapting. Compassion became painful. So the ability tried reducing compassion. Fear became painful, so it tried removing fear. Memory became painful, so it tried dulling memory. Kael clenched his teeth. Lucian smiled. You cannot stop evolution. Kael dropped to one knee. The floor cracked. The fragments inside him pulsed violently. The coffin answered. One chain snapped, then another. Seraphine screamed, Lucian. He looked at her. Tears were running down her face. You're killing him. Lucian's expression softened. No. He looked at Kael. I'm completing him. The coffin opened. 2. A hand sized. Scarred. Alive, Kael saw the same hand from the void, the predecessor. But this was not a vision. The hand gripped the coffin edge. Every fragment inside Kael screamed. He felt himself pulled forward. The First Calamity spoke, not aloud. Come inside every mind. Kael stood. Seraphine grabbed him. Kael. He turned toward her. For one terrifying second, he did not recognize her. Then fear hit him. Good. He seized the fear Seraphine. Her name, silver hair, infirmary notebook. Scientifically insane. Lucian frowned. The predecessor called again. Come here. Kael took one step backward. The chamber trembled. Lucian raised both hands. The pilgrim screamed. More suffering entered Kael. His body convulsed, 100 times stronger. Then 200. Then something beyond numbers. His muscles were no longer merely generating force. His nervous system was changing how force moved through him. His bones hardened. His senses expanded. Mana became visible. Look at you. Kael looked at his hands. Power enough to level the chamber, maybe the city. Maybe more. The coffin opened wider. The scarred man's face became visible inside. One eye, exactly as Kael remembered. The predecessor looked directly at him. Still trying, froze. This was not telepathy. The man was speaking. Lucian stopped smiling. You can hear him? Kael ignored him. The predecessor continued. You think control makes you different. Kael walked toward the coffin. Seraphine shouted. Darius stepped between them. Kael stopped. Darius's sword trembled. He knew he could not win. Still he stood there. Kael looked at him move. No, I could kill you, I know. Darius swallowed. That's why I'm standing here. Kael's third stage pushed harder. Threat, obstacle, remove. His hand moved. Darius closed his eyes. Kael stopped his fist 1 centimeter from Darius's face. The shockwave alone split the stone behind him. Silence. Kael stared at his own hand. Darius opened his eyes. You stopped? Kael slowly lowered his fist. Yes, inside the coffin, the predecessor smiled. Interesting. Lucian screamed. No! He thrust both hands forward. Every pilgrim collapsed. All remaining emotional suffering was ripped from them at once. The force entered Kael. His mind fractured. Images exploded. Millions. He saw lives that were not his, pain that was not his. He could not separate them anymore. Pain conversion went berserk. Kael's body began evolving without permission. Skin hardened. Eyes darkened. Heartbeat slowed. Emotion started disappearing. Seraphine ran toward him, released another wave. Kael raised one hand. Don't, she stopped. His voice sounded wrong. To Kael? He looked at her. He knew she mattered, but he could no longer feel why. Panic should have come. It did not. That was the worst sign yet. The predecessor sat up inside the coffin. 3 chains remained. Kael understood. If he lost emotion completely, the third stage would finish adapting. And when emotional pain disappeared, his fragments would no longer have resistance. The predecessor could take him. Kael, not more power. Pain he refused to erase. He looked at Darius, then Seraphine, then the pilgrims, then Lucian, and made a choice. Kael stopped fighting the suffering. He opened himself to all of it. Not converting, not adapting. Feeling the grief hit, his knees buckled. The fear hit, he screamed. The loneliness hit. Tears came. His hands shook. Lucian stared. What are you doing? Kael laughed through tears. Being weak, the third stage stuttered. The dark veins receded. The predecessor's smile disappeared. Kael felt everything. Too much. Enough to destroy a normal mind. But he had spent his entire life treating pain as an enemy to overpower. Now he did something harder. He endured without changing it. The fragments inside him quieted. One heartbeat. Then another. The chains around the coffin stopped breaking. Lucian panicked. No, Kael stood weak. Shaking, human, Lucian attacked. A wave of emotional force struck him. No massive power increase. No monstrous adaptation. Kael smiled. Lucian's face twisted. You're rejecting your gift. No. Kael took another step. I'm controlling when it gets to answer. Lucian sent another wave. Kael fell to one knee, then stood another. Kael's nose bled. Lucian backed away. You could be perfect. Kael reached him. I'd rather be myself. Lucian threw a punch. Kael caught it, not because of 100 times multiplier. Because even without active pain amplification, Kael had retained permanent strength from everything he had survived. Lucian realized too late. Kael punched him once. The blow launched him across the altar. Seraphine shouted his name. Kael looked at her. Alive, she understood. Kael walked toward Lucian. The Black Serpent leader crawled backward. You need me. No. I know where the remaining fragments are. Kael stopped. Lucian smiled. There Darius approached. Don't listen. Lucian ignored him. 5 fragments remain. Kael said nothing. 3 are already destabilizing. Kael's expression hardened. 1 beneath the ashen desert. Lucian coughed blood. 1 beneath the crown of storms. Another breath. 1 beneath the capital of the Eastern Empire. Seraphine went still. Lucian smiled. If that one wakes, millions die. Kael stared at him. And the other 2? Lucian looked toward the coffin. The predecessor's eye remained open, already moving. The ground shook. Far away, something answered. Then another. Kael felt both. 2 fragments had left their sanctuaries, coming toward him. The predecessor laughed softly from inside the coffin. Now it begins. The remaining chains around the coffin cracked. Not from Lucian, from outside. The approaching fragments were weakening the prison remotely. Kael looked toward Seraphine. Get everyone out. She shook her head. No, that wasn't a suggestion. Neither is this. Kael almost argued. Then the ceiling split open. A beam of white light crashed into the chamber. Everyone looked up. Something descended through the ruin. A human arm. Severed at the shoulder. Covered in ancient scars, the 3rd fragment. It flew directly toward Kael. The predecessor smiled. Kael raised both hands. Of course the arm struck him. Pain erased the world. When Kael opened his eyes again, he was standing in the void. The scarred predecessor waited. But this time, he was not alone. 5 other versions of Kael stood around him. 1 smiling, 1 crying. 1 covered in blood. 1 expressionless. 1 wearing a crown. The predecessor spread his arms. Choose. Kael looked around. Choose what? The 5 versions of himself opened their eyes. What kind of monster you become? Kael looked at the 5 versions of himself. None of them felt like illusions. That was the first problem. The second was that he understood every one of them. The smiling Kael stood barefoot in a field beneath a blue sky. No scars. No weapons, no blood. His eyes were warm. Choose peace. The crying Kael knelt among graves. His hands were covered in dirt. Choose attachment. The blood-covered Kael held a sword made from black bone. Bodies stretched behind him to the horizon. Choose power. The expressionless Kael stood in absolute darkness. Nothing moved around him. Nothing touched him. Choose freedom from pain. The final Kael wore a crown. Cities burned beneath his throne. Millions bowed. Choose control. At the center of them all stood the scarred predecessor. He watched quietly. Kael stared at him. This is another test. The man smiled. A memory. Kael frowned. The predecessor gestured around them. My memory. The 5 Kaels changed. Their faces remained Kaels. Their bodies did not. Now each one resembled a younger version of the predecessor. You saw these paths. I lived them. The smiling figure vanished first. The peaceful man had abandoned battle. He had built a home, married, raised children. For 11 years he had barely used his ability. Then enemies found him. His family died before he could become strong enough to stop them. The crying version disappeared next. He had loved everyone, protected everyone, carried every death inside him. Grief became fuel. Fuel became strength. Eventually, he began subconsciously allowing dangerous battles because every loss made him stronger. Then came the blood-covered version. He had surrendered to power immediately. He sought enemies, then stronger enemies, then wars, then nations. Once nothing could challenge him, he began creating threats just to feel resistance again. The expressionless version followed. He had removed attachment. Fear, grief, love. Pain became distant information. He stopped suffering. He also stopped understanding why anyone else mattered. Finally, the crowned version remained. He had tried controlling everything. Governments, guilds, armies, trade, magic. He believed suffering came from uncertainty. So he removed uncertainty. Every person had a role. Every city had rules. Every deviation was punished. Crime disappeared. So did freedom. Kael watched the final kingdom collapse under rebellion. The crown predecessor sat alone on his throne. He whispered one sentence before the memory ended. I saved everyone from everything except me. The void returned. Kael looked at the scarred man. So every choice fails? No, that seems to be the lesson. The predecessor laughed. That was my lesson. Kael waited. The man stepped closer. You are making the same mistake I did. What mistake? Believing there is a final version of you. Kael said nothing. The predecessor touched Kael's chest. You want one answer. Peace, attachment, power, detachment, control. One identity that protects you from becoming a monster. Kael understood where this was going. There isn't one, no. The scarred man smiled. You choose every day. The void trembled. The third fragment was still trying to bond with him. Kael could feel it. A severed arm. Strength adaptation. Stored combat memory, thousands of battles. Enough power to erase cities. The predecessor looked toward the darkness. This fragment was my right arm. Kael looked down. His own right hand had begun turning black. Scars appeared across his skin. Not his herited ones. What happens if I accept it? You gain what the arm remembers. And if I refuse, it finds another vessel. Kael's expression hardened. Lucian? Then there was no choice. Kael extended his hand. The predecessor grabbed it. Pain exploded. Every battle stored inside the fragment entered Kael. Swords through flesh. Spears through lungs, crushed bones, burned nerves. Poison, lightning, frost. Mana collapse, pressure, starvation, exhaustion. Kael screamed. But this time, something was different. The fragment tried teaching him completed adaptations. Kael rejected completion. He took the memories, not the conclusions. He learned how the predecessor survived fire, but refused to become permanently insensitive to heat. He learned how he survived poison, but refused to erase biological vulnerability entirely. He learned the structure of thousands of combat movements, but refused to let instinct overwrite decision. The fragment fought him. Kael fought back. Not with power, with boundaries. This is mine. His arm, his nerves, his mind. His choices, the black scars stopped spreading. They retreated. When the pain ended, Kael's right arm looked normal again. Almost one thin black line remained across his palm. The predecessor stared, then laughed, not mockingly. Genuinely. You really are annoying. Kael breathed heavily. I hear that often. The man's smile vanished. The next time we meet, I may not be able to help you. Kael looked at him. Why help me now? The predecessor turned away. For the first time, shame entered his face. Because I remember enough of being human to want someone else to succeed where I failed. The void began collapsing. Kael called after him. The man stopped. Silence, then he answered, Erindor. Kael woke screaming. Stone shattered beneath him. The third fragment had disappeared. Lucian stood several meters away. His expression was horrified. Seraphine was beside Kael. Darius held 3 Black Serpent soldiers at sword point. The coffin remained open. Erindor's body lay inside. Still incomplete, still chained. Kael looked at his right hand. The black line across his palm remained. Lucian whispered, You integrated it. Kael stood. His body felt different. Not overwhelmingly stronger, more efficient. Every motion had thousands of inherited examples behind it. He moved one foot. His balance adjusted automatically. Lucian attacked, no warning, no spell. He simply transferred raw emotional agony directly into Kael. The pain struck. Kael staggered. His third stage reacted. But Kael did not let it expand blindly. He chose only reflexes. The adaptation concentrated. His perception accelerated. Lucian attacked physically. Kael moved. One step, one strike. Lucian fell. He never saw the punch. Kael looked at his own fist. That was new. Pain conversion had always decided how to strengthen him. Now Kael could direct the conversion. Lucian crawled backward. No, Kael approached. Lucian sent fear. Kael converted only enough to reinforce breathing and focus. Lucian sent grief. Kael converted only enough to sharpen balance. Lucian sent rage. Kael used it to strengthen one arm. Nothing more. For the first time, pain was no longer commanding his evolution. Kael was. Lucian understood before Seraphine did. You separated the response. Kael nodded. Lucian's face collapsed. That shouldn't be possible. Apparently it is. The coffin shook, turned. Erindor opened his eye. Not a vision, not a memory. His physical body moved. One finger. 3 fragments were now inside Kael. That meant 3 chains had weakened. The remaining fragments were approaching. Kael felt them. One from the north, one from far east, one beneath them. He froze them. The witness sharpened. Mana currents appeared. Something was moving below the chamber, fast. Kael looked down, moved. Seraphine reacted immediately. Darius grabbed Lucian. They jumped. The floor exploded. A human leg erupted upward. The fourth fragment, it struck Kael directly in the chest. He flew through a column. Pain conversion ignited. Kael directed everything into skeletal reinforcement. His spine survived the impact. The leg attacked again, not mindlessly. Combat instinct remained inside it. A kick crossed the chamber. Kael blocked. His forearms fractured, strength surged. He directed it into his legs. Moved, the next kick missed. The fragment pivoted impossibly in midair and attacked again. Kael ducked. The shockwave removed the upper half of a statue. Seraphine shouted, "How do we stop it?" "Don't." Kael smiled. "It wants me." The severed leg launched forward. Kael opened his arms. "Come on." It kicked him through the altar. Lucian screamed. "You're insane," Seraphine shouted over him. "We established that weeks ago." Kael rose from rubble. Both arms were damaged, his chest burned. His left knee trembled. Pain conversion offered power. Kael directed it. Not randomly, shoulders back. Core hands. He grabbed the leg during its next attack. The force dragged him across the floor. Kael held on. The fragment twisted. Kael's shoulder dislocated. More pain, more directed power. His grip tightened. The leg stopped moving, then began dissolving. Black energy entered Kael's arms. The bonding pain hit. He did not enter the void this time. Memory came directly, running across oceans, kicking through fortress walls. Surviving falls from mountains. Balance on collapsing terrain. Movement. Endless movement. Kael felt the adaptation try rewriting his legs. He guided it. Take efficiency. Take memory. Keep vulnerability. Keep choice. The fragment integrated. Kael dropped to one knee. The black line across his palm extended around his wrist. Another appeared across his ankle. 4 fragments. 3 remained. The coffin exploded. All remaining chains snapped at once. Seraphine drew her sword. Darius dragged Lucian backward. Kael looked toward the center. Arinder sat up fully. His body was incomplete. One arm missing, one eye missing, one leg missing. Parts represented by the fragments inside Kael were absent from his physical form. Yet the pressure filling the chamber was unimaginable. Arinder stepped from the coffin. Barefoot, scarred, calm. Lucian fell to his knees. First Calamity. Arinder looked at him. "Who are you?" Lucian's face broke. For decades, the Black Serpent had worshipped him. Fed him, killed for him. Arinder did not know his name. "I awakened you," Lucian whispered. Arinder looked around. Thousands of unconscious pilgrims, destroyed statues, Black Serpent banners. His expression slowly darkened. "You worship me?" Lucian bowed lower. "Yes." Arinder crossed the distance between them. Kael barely saw him move. He grabbed Lucian by the throat. "Why?" Lucian gasped. "You transcended humanity." Arinder stared at him, then threw him across the chamber. Kael almost smiled. Seraphine looked equally confused. Arinder turned toward Kael. Their eyes met. The ancient man looked at Kael's hand. Then ankle, 4 fragments, his fragments. "You inside someone else." "Yes, but they didn't consume you." "No," Arinder smiled faintly. "Good." Darius lowered his sword slightly. Seraphine did not. Kael studied Arinder. "You're awake, partially. You said collecting all 7 would wake you inside me." "It would." Kael's expression hardened. Arinder continued. "But these fools forced my central body awake first." Lucian rose shakily. "You should be grateful," ignored him. Kael asked, "What happens now?" The ancient man looked toward the ceiling. "The remaining fragments are coming." Kael felt them too. 3 signals. Closer, one approaching from the north. One racing from the east. One still beneath the Eastern Empire. Arinder's face became serious. "If they reach this body, I become complete." Seraphine tightened her grip and Arinder looked at her. "I become what history remembers." Kael understood. The physical body still carried old adaptations, old instincts, old psychological damage. Completing it could restore the calamity. "And if I take them first?" Arinder looked at him. "You become strong enough to stop me." Lucian laughed. Everyone turned. He was bleeding from the mouth. "You still don't understand." Kael saw it immediately. The witness caught the change in Lucian's posture. His fingers, a hidden trigger. Kael moved, too late. Lucian slammed his hand against the floor. A black rune activated. Across the entire city. The pilgrims woke, all at once, then screamed. Thousands of people released every remaining fragment of emotional suffering. The energy surged downward. Not into Kael. Into Arinder. The ancient man's eyes widened. "No." Lucian laughed through blood. "I did not spend 12 years preparing your resurrection to watch you become sentimental." Arinder's body convulsed. Dark veins spread across his chest. Old adaptations awakened. Kael felt the pressure rise. 10 times 50, 100. The chamber collapsed around them. Arindor screamed. His missing arm began forming from black energy. Then his eye, then his leg, temporary replacements. Pain and suffering were reconstructing him. Kael realized what Lucian had done. He had bypassed the fragments. Not permanently, but long enough. Arindor looked at Kael. For 1 second he was still himself. Run. Then his remaining eye turned black. The First Calamity smiled. Kael did not move. Seraphine grabbed his shoulder. Kael. He watched Arindor's temporary body complete itself. Power rolled outward. The ruined city above began lifting from the ground. Entire buildings floated, stones shattered. Clouds twisted. Kael's fragments screamed inside him. Arindor took 1 step. The chamber vanished. Not collapsed, vanished. The pressure erased it. Kael, Seraphine, Darius, and Lucian were thrown into open air as the underground city exploded upward. Kael twisted mid-flight. Caught Seraphine. Caught Darius with his other arm. Lucian fell. Nobody reached for him. Kael landed kilometers away. His legs shattered on impact. Pain detonated, 100 times stronger. He directed it. Bones, tendons, spine. He remained standing. Seraphine stared toward Valtharis. Where the city had been, a crater now stretched across the earth. At its center stood Arindor, complete in black energy. Lucian's tiny body fell toward him. The First Calamity caught him. Lucian smiled desperately. My lord. Arindor looked into his eyes, then crushed his skull with one hand. Silence. Seraphine turned away. Darius stared. Kael watched. Arindor looked toward them from kilometers away. The witness met his gaze. Kael felt the ancient man's killing intent before he moved. Down, Kael threw Seraphine and Darius aside. Arindor appeared. A fist struck Kael's chest. For the second time in his life, Kael felt his heart stop. He flew across the landscape. Through trees, through stone, through an abandoned watchtower. Then into a mountain. Darkness filled his vision. His body was destroyed. Pain conversion activated harder than ever before. 100 times. 200. 500. His shattered heart twitched. Stopped. Twitched again. Kael's ability searched for a solution. More strength was useless. More speed was useless. More durability was too late. So Kael gave it a single command. Survive. His body answered. His heart restarted. Kael opened his eyes beneath tons of broken stone. For the first time, he understood the real potential of his ability. It had never been about becoming 100 times stronger. Strength had only been the simplest answer to pain. Now Kael could choose the answer. Outside the mountain, Arindor waited. Kael pushed himself from the rubble. Every bone screamed. Every breath burned. His heart beat unevenly. He smiled again. Arindor heard him. From 3 kilometers away, across a valley carved open by a single punch, the First Calamity slowly turned his head. Kael emerged from the mountain. His shirt was gone. Blood covered his chest. One shoulder sat lower than the other. Several ribs had pierced muscle. His left leg dragged behind him. His heartbeat was unstable. He should have been dead. Instead, every step taught his body something new. Not strength. Survival. Kael had finally understood the difference. For weeks, he had treated pain conversion like a multiplier. Get injured, become stronger, survive. Retain a fraction, repeat. That understanding had made him powerful. It had also been primitive. Pain conversion did not multiply strength. It searched for answers. When the Crimson Ogre broke his bones, strength had been the simplest answer. When poison entered his blood, resistance had been the answer. When the witness attacked his mind, perception and psychological adaptation had answered. When Arindor stopped his heart, raw physical power could do nothing. So the ability had learned to restart it. Kael looked at the ancient man waiting below. Arindor smiled, then vanished. The witness screamed a warning. Kael turned. Arindor's heel struck his ribs. Kael flew sideways. 3 ribs shattered completely. Pain. Kael directed the response. Not strength, flexibility. His connective tissues changed. Arindor appeared above him. A fist descended. Kael crossed both arms. Impact. His forearms fractured. He struck the ground hard enough to create a crater. Pain. Kael chose density. Bones reinforced. Arindor landed better. Kael spat blood. Thanks. Arindor kicked. Kael moved. The kick grazed his jaw. Pain conversion sharpened neural processing. The next attack came. Kael saw it barely. He dodged. Arindor's fist passed beside his ear. The shockwave destroyed the forest behind him. Kael countered. His fist struck Arindor's stomach. Nothing. The ancient man looked down, then at Kael, too weak. He punched Kael through the chest. Seraphine screamed from the distant ridge. Arindor's hand emerged from Kael's back. Blood poured down his arm. Kael stared at him. Arindor leaned closer. This is the difference between us. Kael's vision darkened. You learned to control pain. Arindor twisted his hand. Kael screamed. I became pain. He ripped his arm free. Kael collapsed. His heart was intact. Barely one lung was destroyed. Massive blood loss. Spinal trauma. Internal bleeding. The old Kael would have converted everything into raw strength. This Kael gave separate commands. Seal blood vessels. Maintain brain oxygenation. Compensate with one lung. Reinforce spinal structure. Reduce shock. Do not remove pain. His body obeyed. Arinder watched. Interest replaced contempt. Kael stood. Slowly, impossibly, the hole through his torso remained. It was not healing, but his body had reorganized around the damage. Arinder's smile disappeared. You learned selective adaptation, yes. That took me 60 years. Kael wiped blood from his mouth. I had a good teacher. Something flickered behind Arinder's black eye. For a second, the man from the void returned. Then the calamity swallowed him again. Arinder attacked. Kael stopped trying to win. That was the breakthrough. He stopped thinking about defeating Arinder. He studied him. Every punch taught timing. Every kick taught balance. Every shockwave taught pressure resistance. Every mana burst taught energy dispersion. Kael was beaten across the valley. Again. Again. Mountainsides cracked. Forests disappeared. Rivers changed direction. But each time Arinder struck him, the same attack became slightly less effective. The ancient man noticed. He changed techniques. He changed again. Kael adapted again. Fire Kael burned, cold. Kael froze lightning. Kael's nervous system failed. Gravity, his bones cracked, mana suppression. His fragments dimmed, psychological pressure, memories attacked him. Kael survived everything, not perfectly, not painlessly. That mattered. Arinder had since becoming immune to suffering. Kael was doing something different. He was becoming capable of surviving suffering while still feeling it. Seraphine realized first. He's not trying to overpower him. Darius stared at the battle. Then what is he doing? Learning. Arinder struck Kael with enough force to bury him beneath the earth. Kael emerged seconds later. Arinder attacked again. Kael blocked. For the first time his feet did not move. The ancient man froze. Kael looked over his crossed arms. Again Arinder punched. Kael caught the fist. The valley went silent. The shock wave traveled around Kael instead of through him. His body had learned how to distribute force. Arinder pulled back. Kael held him. Then punched. The blow struck Arinder's face. Blood appeared. One drop. It fell between them. Arinder touched his cheek. He stared at the blood on his fingers, then laughed. The sound shook the clouds. Yes, he attacked with both hands. Kael met him. The battle changed. No longer predator and victim. Two monsters collided. Fists broke sound. Stone liquefied beneath their feet. Kael's permanent strength combined with directed pain conversion. A broken knuckle reinforced his wrist. A damaged ankle improved balance. A torn muscle caused neighboring muscle groups to compensate. Every injury became information. Arinder punched Kael's shoulder. Kael used the pain to strengthen his opposite arm. Arinder blocked. Kael's leg fractured. He converted the trauma into rotational force. Kick. Arinder flew backward. Kael followed. For the first time, the First Calamity was being pushed. Seraphine watched from the ridge. A strange smile appeared on her face. Darius noticed. You knew? No, you look like you knew, I hoped. Below them, Arinder slammed Kael into the ground. Kael hooked his damaged leg around Arinder's neck, rolled. Through him, the ancient man landed upright. Kael attacked. Arinder blocked 6 strikes. The 7th entered his chest, the 8th struck his throat. The 9th retaliated. Kael's jaw shattered. Kael kept it. No conversion. Arinder hesitated. That was enough. Kael headbutted him. Both men staggered. You kept that one. Kael could barely speak. Needed motivation. The ancient man smiled. For one moment, they almost looked like warriors enjoying a battle. Then Arinder's black eye changed. The calamity took control completely. Kael's witness screamed. Run! Kael did not. Arinder raised one hand. Every particle of mana within kilometers moved toward his palm. Seraphine went pale. Kael, a black sphere formed. Tiny, silent. The ground beneath Arinder disappeared. Not broke. Kael understood. This attack was not designed to injure. It erased. Pain conversion required survival. There would be nothing left to adapt if the attack destroyed him instantly. Arinder had found the weakness. The black sphere launched. Kael could not dodge. Seraphine was behind him. Darius. The military camp farther east. Thousands of refugees beyond that. If Kael moved, the attack continued through all of them. Seraphine screamed. No! Kael raised both hands. The sphere struck. There was no pain. That terrified him. His fingers began disappearing. Then his hands. Matter unraveled. Pain conversion had nothing to convert. Kael's fragments reacted. The severed arm, the leg, the witness. The first fragment. 4 pieces of Arindor inside him screamed together. Memory flooded Kael. Arindor had faced this before, not this exact attack. Erasure. Centuries ago, 7 kingdoms had tried destroying him with a weapon designed to remove matter itself. He survived. How? Kael searched the inherited memory. Nothing. The adaptation had been automatic. Arindor had become resistant. Kael did not have time for automatic evolution. His wrists began disappearing. The black sphere moved closer to his chest. Kael looked through it at Arindor. The ancient man was watching. Waiting, then Kael understood. Pain was not only physical sensation. Loss was pain. His hands were gone. That absence hurt. Not through nerves, through awareness. Pain conversion responded. Kael seized it. Adapt to absence. The ability hesitated. Kael commanded again. Adapt to what is missing. Something impossible happened. His fragments moved. Black lines spread from his wrists. Not regeneration, replacement. Temporary structures formed from stored adaptation energy. Hands made from compressed reinforcement. The black sphere erased them. Kael formed them again. Erased. Again. Each cycle lasted slightly longer. Arindor's eye widened. Kael screamed. The ability learned. Erasure stopped advancing, then slowed, then halted. Kael stood with half his forearms missing, holding the black sphere between hands that technically did not exist. Arindor whispered, "Impossible." Kael smiled through a broken jaw. That word is getting boring. He compressed the sphere. The fragments helped. They remembered Arindor's energy, recognized it, adapted against their original owner. Kael crushed the attack. Black light exploded upward. The sky split. Kael collapsed. His real hands were gone. Blood should have poured from the wounds. His body had already sealed the vessels. Seraphine ran toward him. Arindor moved first. He appeared beside Kael. Seraphine stopped. Darius raised his sword. Arindor ignored them. He stared at Kael's missing hands. "You surpassed one of my adaptations." Kael looked up. "Not yet," Arindor frowned. Kael's temporary reinforcement hands grabbed his ankle. Pain conversion erupted. Kael pulled. Arindor crashed into the ground. Kael climbed onto him. Broken jaw. One lung, multiple fractures, nearly empty. Still fighting. He struck Arindor with a reinforcement fist again. Again, each blow weakened the temporary black body Lucian had created. Arindor grabbed Kael's throat. Kael struck again. Fingers tightened. Again, Kael's vision darkened again. Arindor's temporary arm cracked again. The black energy shattered. The ancient man threw Kael away. Both stood barely. Arindor's reconstructed body flickered. Kael's temporary hands flickered too. The battle had reached its end. They both knew. Arindor looked toward the horizon. The remaining fragments are almost here. Kael felt them 3. 1 from the north. 1 from the east. 1 beneath the Eastern Empire. The first 2 were minutes away. "If they reach me," Arindor said, "this ends." Kael nodded. "If they reach you, you may disappear." "I know. You would carry 6 fragments, yes." "And when the 7th wakes?" Kael said nothing. Arindor smiled sadly. "You'll have to choose again." The northern fragment arrived first. A human rib cage tore through the clouds. Ancient bone covered in black scars. It stopped above the battlefield. The eastern fragment appeared seconds later. A severed left hand. Both hovered between Kael and Arindor. The world held its breath. Arindor extended his arm. Kael did not. The fragments trembled. Arindor smiled. "They remember me." The rib cage moved toward him. Kael closed his eyes. He could force them. The fragments inside him wanted completion too. He could activate pain conversion. Pull, fight. Take instead. Kael lowered his arms. Seraphine stared. "What are you doing?" Kael looked at Arindor, choosing. The ribcage reached the ancient man, then stopped. Arindor frowned. The left hand stopped too. Kael understood before he did. The fragments remembered Arindor, but they also remembered his suffering. Centuries of uncontrolled adaptation. Isolation. Loss, emptiness. They had experienced Kael now. A host who allowed pain without surrendering identity. The ribcage turned. Arindor whispered no. It flew into Kael, then the hand pain exploded. Kael fell. 6 fragments bonded simultaneously. His body lifted from the ground. Black scars covered him. The sky manna bent toward him. Seraphine could not approach. Darius was thrown backward. Arindor stared. Kael entered the void. 6 fragments surrounded him. Arm, leg, eye, hand, ribs, and the first fragment. At the center stood Arindor's memory. Not the calamity. "You won." Kael shook his head. "Not yet. 1 fragment remains." The heart. Arindor nodded. Kael finally understood why the last fragment had remained beneath the Eastern Empire. The heart. Not metaphorical, the actual heart of infinite adaptation. The source from which the other fragments coordinated. If I take it, you become the complete vessel. And you, Arinder looked down at himself. This version of me ends. Kay, you're afraid him. The ancient man laughed softly. I had forgotten what that felt like. Good. Arinder looked at him. Kael smiled. Means you're still human. The void vanished. Kael returned. He stood on the battlefield. His hands had returned. Real hands. The new fragments had reconstructed what erasure had taken, but Kael could feel the danger. 6 fragments. 6 enormous reservoirs of adaptation. His body wanted to change. Constantly, he held it still. Arinder stood opposite him. His temporary reconstruction was collapsing. He looked smaller, older. Human Kael approached. Seraphine watched cautiously. Arinder did not attack. Kael stopped in front of him. What happens when your body disappears? I return to whatever remains in the heart. So I'll see you again, unfortunately. Kael smiled. Arinder looked past him toward Seraphine. Keep him attached. Seraphine raised an eyebrow. To anything. Arinder's body began turning into black dust. People promises. Irritating arguments, bad food, stupid jokes. Kael looked offended. My jokes are improving. No. Even Darius laughed. Arinder looked at Kael one final time. When the heart awakens, it will contain the worst of me. Kael's smile disappeared. Then I'll deal with it. You may have to kill me. I know you may have to destroy yourself with me. Kael paused. Then shook his head. No, Arinder frowned. I'm done accepting choices where everyone loses. The ancient man stared, then smiled. Good answer. His body dissolved. The valley became silent. The first calamity was gone. For now, 3 months passed. Blackridge rebuilt. The Black Serpent fractured after Lucian's death. Some members surrendered. Others disappeared. Darius confessed publicly. Everything. The dungeon betrayal. The assassination contract. His cooperation with the Black Serpent. The guild sentenced him to imprisonment. Kael did not interfere. Saving someone did not erase consequences. Darius accepted the sentence. Before the guards took him away, he looked at Kael. 12 gold crowns. Kael frowned. Darius smiled bitterly. That's what I thought your life was worth. I was wrong. Yes. Darius laughed. You could make this emotional. I could. But you won't know. The guards led him away. Seraphine reopened her clinic. Kael became its worst patient. You cannot call getting stabbed training. It was controlled. You punctured a kidney. Temporarily. Kael, scientifically. She threw the notebook at him. He dodged. The witness had made that unfair. Outside the clinic, children played hunter. One pretended to be Kael. He allowed the others to hit him with sticks before dramatically becoming stronger. Kael stared through the window. I don't like that. Seraphine smiled. What? They're learning the wrong lesson, which is, that getting hit is good. She looked at him. And the right lesson? Kael watched the children. That what hurts you doesn't have to decide what you become. Seraphine became quiet. Then the ground pulsed. Kael stopped. 6 fragments answered. His smile vanished. Seraphine felt it too. Yes. Far east. Beneath the capital of an empire containing 8 million people, the 7th fragment had awakened. Kael collected his coat. Seraphine was already reaching for her sword. He looked at her. You're coming? She stared. That question is becoming insulting. Kael smiled. They left before sunset. 2 weeks later, they reached the Eastern Empire. The capital had been evacuated, at least most of it. The heart had awakened beneath the imperial palace. Every clock in the city had stopped. Every mana crystal had gone dark. Kael and Seraphine descended alone. Beneath the palace, they found a chamber. No guards, no cult. No monsters, only a heart floating above a black pedestal. Still beating, Kael approached. 6 fragments screamed inside him. The heart beat once. He fell to his knees. Every injury he had ever experienced returned simultaneously. The sword through his stomach, broken arm, crushed ribs, poison, fractures. The bishop, the witness, Arinder's punches. Erafing, Kael screamed. Seraphine ran toward him. Stay back. She stopped. The heart beat again. Emotional pain returned. 3 years of humiliation. Betrayal, fear, grief. Every moment he had almost lost himself. Then came pain that was not his, Arindor's. Kael entered the void. Arinder waited. But he looked different. Black eyes, no smile. The calamity. Kael stood. Yes. You know what happens now. Tell me anyway. If you take the heart, there will be no separation between us. Kael looked at him. Your memories? Yours, your power, yours. Your failures? Smiled, especially those. Kael approached, and you? The ancient man looked almost peaceful. A memory, Kael extended his hand. Arinder did not take it. One final question. Kael waited. Why do you want power? Months ago, the answer would have been revenge, then survival, then protection. Now Kael thought carefully, I don't. Arinder looked surprised. Kael continued, I want the ability to choose what I do when power becomes necessary. Silence. Then Arindor laughed. The calamity disappeared from his eyes. Better than my answer. He took Kael's hand. The heart entered. There was no explosion. No earthquake, no beam of light. Kael simply felt everything. 7 fragments became one. Infinite adaptation awakened completely. Every injury, every memory, every possibility. His ability offered him endless evolution. Perfect strength, perfect durability, immunity to pain, immunity to fatality, detachment. Kael refused them all, not forever. Just today. Because that was the lesson. There was no final choice. No permanent victory over becoming a monster. Only choices repeated, again and again. Kael opened his eyes. He was back beneath the palace. Seraphine stood in front of him. Her sword was drawn. Kael looked at it, then at her. You were going to stab me if you woke up evil. Where? She considered somewhere educational. Kael laughed. Seraphine lowered the sword. The heart was gone. The pedestal was empty. Kael could feel the complete ability inside himself. Quiet waiting. For the first time since he was 18, pain conversion no longer felt like a curse, a mystery, or a weapon. It felt like a question. What will you do with what hurt you? Kael climbed the stairs. Sunlight waited above. Years later, historians would argue about what to call him. The adaptive king. The man who could not be broken. The 7th vessel. The last calamity. Kael hated all of them. He remained a hunter. Sometimes he saved cities. Sometimes he trained recruits. Sometimes he disappeared for months into dungeons. No one else could survive. He still got injured. He still felt every injury. That was intentional. Because the day pain stopped meaning anything was the day he would know something had gone terribly wrong. Eventually, the old guild examiner who had declared his ability useless retired. Kael attended the ceremony. The elderly man nearly fainted when he saw him. I owe you an apology, Kael smiled. For what? I called your ability useless. Kael thought about the Crimson Ogre, Verafine, Lucian, the fragments, Arindor, all the suffering that had followed. Then he shook his head. You were right, the examiner stared. Kael looked toward a group of young hunters practicing outside. An ability is useless until someone decides what to do with it. He walked away. Behind him, the examiner remained speechless. Seraphine waited at the guild entrance. You enjoy dramatic exits too much. I learned from experience. Where are we going? Kael handed her a mission report. An unknown dungeon had appeared beyond the northern mountains. Estimated S rank. Multiple teams missing. Seraphine read it, then looked at him. You realize normal people take vacations. I tried one. You spent the entire vacation fighting a sea dragon. It attacked first. You swam into its territory. Details. She sighed and followed him. At the city gate, Kael stopped. A young porter was struggling to lift several supply bags. Hunters walked past without helping. Kael recognized the expression on the boy's face. Embarrassment. Frustration. The desperate desire not to appear weak. Kael walked over. He lifted half the bags. The boy stared. I can carry those, I know. Then why are you helping? Kael adjusted the weight over his shoulder. Because I remember what they feel like. The boy had no idea who he was speaking to. That made Kael smile. They walked toward the northern road. Seraphine watched him. What nothing? You're staring. I'm observing. That sounds suspiciously like something I say. You're adapting. Kael laughed. Behind them, Black Ridge disappeared beneath the morning light. Ahead waited monsters. Wars. Injuries Kael had not yet imagined. Perhaps one day something would finally appear that his body could not survive. He accepted that. Infinite adaptation did not make him invincible. It made every wound an opportunity to answer differently. Once, the world had laughed because Kael Veyron possessed an ability that seemed to do nothing. Then his enemies discovered the truth. Break his bones and his body learned. Poison him and his blood adapted. Burn him and the flames became a lesson. Attack his mind and he learned to endure without surrendering himself. Push him to death, and even death became a problem his body tried to solve. But the greatest power Kael ever gained was not becoming 100 times stronger. It was learning that suffering could change him without owning him. And that was why the strongest version of Kael was never the one covered in blood. It was the one who could stand after everything was over, still recognize the people beside him, still choose what mattered, and still remain human. Seraphine called from farther up the road. You're falling behind. Kael looked up. Then it's impossible. He ran after her, and somewhere deep inside him, where 7 fragments had finally become whole, the last echo of Arindor laughed. Not like a calamity, like a man.